hand these. We went through this yesterday, and it's actually pretty good. But this is all this is here is a little talk of. But I think what's good about it is it's a letter of Father Patrick Roy. How do you say the name? Which is similar to Patty King. That's the name of my aunt. Well, it's the French version, I guess. Patrick Roy. Patty Patricia King is my aunt. This is Patrick Roy. And Father Roy is the only priest of the society who's from Quebec. Now, this is a pretty good little letter. It only came out yesterday. But I think of all the letters that came out, it's very good in that I think it explains a lot of our challenges we're dealing with right now. And that is that it mentions many true problems and does a good job of it. It's objective and not like a emotional subjective. That's the positive side. The negative side is just something really glaring that's missing. And it's not obvious, which is going to again be the same problem as a real deep doctrinal problem. And then it's got the positives and negatives, I think, of of our whole battlefield. And Father Roy is he said 5 years of ministry, so he must have been ordained 5 years ago. Would that be 2011? Is that right? So and so he's one of the younger priests. I think one of them. Yeah, he's one. We can narrow it here just because I know we didn't have hundreds of them. So yeah, okay. So we went through it yesterday, but and I just it's a good letter. Father brings up some good points. This is the latest priest to join the resistance. The latest priest to join the resistance. Just officially June the 3rd, which is yesterday. These are the Sacred Heart. And the positives and the negatives are there. And so I think it's worth going through, and then maybe later on we'll discuss this. Father will give a little talk later on, and then later on tonight we'll just have a little discussion, about these things. So, dear brethren, this letter is to notify you of my decision to leave the Society of St. Pius X in spite of my sermon on April 17th last. Many of you will be surprised to learn of my departure. I hope then that these lines will show more clearly the reasons why I am leaving. On April 17th, Father gave a sermon, I believe that it was in Quebec.
In French.
Yeah, in French, right.
Yeah, so we don't.
And he gave the sermon in Quebec. He's a French-Canadian priest. And then the sermon was sent around all over the world to many people. Okay, and the sermon was basically, we should not make a deal with Rome. It's wrong to make a deal with Rome because we can't put ourselves under apostates. And we can't accept apostasy. Basically, more or less. That's kind of a summary. He'll go through the points here. And that sermon went around, okay? And then, as a result, he had to meet with priests, and he was going to be transferred to Africa. Although apparently he was going to be transferred to Africa anyway, they said, but now they're not. But he was going to already be transferred to Africa, and then they weren't happy about his sermon. He preached it to the people. He says, and he mentioned that sermon here, okay? I would like to say that first that I did not wish to my sermon April 17th to be published, urbi et orbi, which means to the city and to the world, and that I myself did all I could to prevent its diffusion. I was preaching merely for the chapel of Montreal, that portion of the Lord's flock entrusted to me by my superior. With that said, the Lord has willed that it be otherwise. So blessed be His holy name. Okay. So he didn't want it to be spread. It was just for his people. All right. I was born and raised in the arms of the society, everything the work of the Archbishop. This is why I am well aware of the gravity of the action that I take before God. We'll come back to that second paragraph there. That I take before God and before yourselves, and aware also of the duty one day to account for myself with the communal of the just. For several years already, the authorities of the society, they no longer cloak themselves, have been organizing a reunification with apostate Rome. So that's 100% correct. And they aren't cloaking themselves. Remember, recent interviews with the art of Bishop Fillet, it continues the same thing ever since the last, really since the year 2000, but in a very visible way since 2012, a bigger way. Is it legitimate to place oneself under authorities who do not have our faith, or to accept from them a recognition so long as they demand no compromise? I leave you to judge to it with these words of Pope Pius XI. Quote, everyone knows that John himself, the apostle of love, who seems to reveal in his gospel the secrets of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and who never ceased to impress on the memories of his followers the new commandment, love one another, altogether forbade any intercourse with those who professed a mutilated and corrupt version of Christ's teaching. If any man come to you, bring not this doctrine, and bring not this doctrine, receive him not into the house, nor say to him, God speed you. For which reason, since charity is based on a complete and sincere faith, the disciples of Christ must be united principally by the bond of one faith, who then can conceive a Christian foundation, a federation, the members of which retain each his own opinions and private judgment, even in matters which concern the object of faith, even though they be repugnant to the opinions of the rest. What manner, we ask you, can men who follow contrary opinions belong to one and the same federation of the faithful? That's Immortal Animos. That's a very good quote, because this really is the crux of what is called correctly tradecumenism. How can Pope Pius XI, not St. Pius XI, Pope Pius XI says, how can you be united in a federation with a different faith? And so that we can't be united in a federation with a different faith. And this is going to be a proper introduction to why am I leaving the Society of St. Pius X? Why am I making this break? Says Father Waugh. Well, it's because there's a new federation of faith. There's a new there's a different faith. So we look back at the second paragraph and we see one of the mysteries here. I didn't want my sermon for April 17th to be, sent abroad, which was essentially a sermon on the faith, and it was a sermon on the problem of the Society of St. Pius X joining Rome. This is not a problem of the Montreal parish, or a problem of the Quebec parish, or a problem of Father Waugh, or a problem of the faithful of that parish. It's a problem of the whole mystical body of Christ, when an organization within that mystical body is going to put itself under apostate Rome, and is going to have a union with souls that they themselves claim don't have exactly the same faith. So that's a concern, right? And so that here again, there's a good quote from Immortal Animos, from Pius XI, leaving the Apostles' charity. Since charity is based on a complete and sincere faith, the disciples of Christ must be united principally by the bond of one faith. This has to be our source of unity. And we can't have a negative source of unity. So one of the temptations whenever you're in a battle is to be tempted to a negative source of unity. We are friends because we hate Pope Francis. We are friends because we hate Vatican II. We're friends because we hate what Bishop Fillet is doing. We're friends because we don't like what the false resistance is doing. We're friends because we don't like this or don't like that. Now remember, to be against something does not mean that you're friends. To be against something doesn't mean that you're connected. Because you might be against Bishop Fillet, because if you get rid of Bishop Fillet, then you can become a superior general. You might be against him because you just hate his guts because he offended you a few years ago and you want to get vengeance. You might be against him because he's too doggone conservative. You might be against him because he's too liberal. You might be against him because he's from Switzerland. And there's about 100 million reasons to be against him, and it could be any combination of those reasons. Some are legitimate reasons, others are illegitimate. But when you're against someone, even for legitimate reasons, that doesn't make you united. This is the first mistake. It happens all the time. Armies, for instance, form. In fact, one of our principles of a just war, it is asked, for instance, So what do you do if you've got a tyrant as a leader? Can you overthrow the tyrant? Well, the tyrant is evil. The tyrant is against God. The tyrant is doing evil things. The tyrant, clearly by the definition of tyrant, needs to be removed, should be removed. But can you just fight against him because he's a tyrant? And the Catholic Church says no. You can't fight against someone just because they're a tyrant. You can't fight against a leader just because they're evil or they're a tyrant. What are the conditions? And you really think about it, it's common sense. Number one, he has to be a real tyrant doing true evil that's to the harm of the common good. So there's a whole bunch of those guys. Easy to find tyrant. Basically, the leader of any government today, more or less. Obama all the way across the world. Okay, they're tyrants. So they're tyrants. First condition, they're evil. But then, I need to be able to defeat the tyrant, and I need to be able to make the situation better after I've defeated the tyrant. I need to be able to put another government in place. I can't just defeat him or fight him because he's a tyrant. I need to be able to make a better situation. You need to have some kind of hope of victory. And so if you're just fighting a moral tyrant, you can't just fight someone because they are a tyrant. It's not good. It's not sufficient. And therefore, and recognize that. And that's one of the devil's traps. He's a tyrant. Well, if he's a tyrant, and I can't take his place, well, then I shouldn't fight against him, right? If he's a tyrant, and I have no hope of defeating him, and he's a tyrant, and I can't make the situation better, well, then I'll just have to live with it. That's one of the deceptions. And also, if I fight him because he's a tyrant, I'm fighting the individual. This is a wrong battlefield. It's the wrong battlefield. We do not fight Bishop Fillet or Pope Francis because they're tyrants. We don't do that. We are against the errors that they're teaching. Again, getting back to the standing on solid ground and not dealing with just the individuals. And we are not united because we're fighting them. We're united in one faith. That's our union. And therefore, this is one of the challenges we're dealing with right now in the resistance. Sede Vacantes, more liberals and less liberals. We've got all kinds of options now. So, you also know, dearest faithful, the society is always called it illegitimate to align oneself with those who have removed themselves from tradition and no longer profess the faith in its integrity. So that's correct. Why, after all, have we committed ourselves to these last 30 years to criticize the printing of St. Peter? Why have we more recently criticized Campos in 2002, 2003? Why do we repudiate the agreement reached in 2006 with the Good Shepherd, having recently asserted to a superior that it will be unnecessary for us to cease criticizing these communities? I received the following response: but we will continue to criticize them. I then asked, why? By what principle? And I received no further reply. My brother wrote that in 2012. I criticized what was going on in the society. Father Tim wrote a letter to Bishop Fillet and to Father Couture, and he said, you say that when we are reunited with Rome, we'll be able to criticize. Well, the superiors. Well, why not let Father Joe, that's me, little brother, well, younger brother, okay, why not let Father Joe criticize the superior? So if we can't criticize the superior now, when we're not under Rome, how are we going to be able to criticize the superior when we are under Rome? We received the same response that Father Laurent received, which is no response. But it's correct, right? So we can't. So it's false to say we're going to criticize later. We don't criticize now. So that's a good point. Secondary point, but a good point. So no, either we have been wrong since '88. This is a very good point. I think he says it well here. We have been wrong since 1988. And even since 1975, that was the year of the suspension. Or we have been wrong since 2012. Remember the old bumper stickers? Some of you probably have it on your cars. If you were right then we were right now. And if you were wrong then what do you call it?
Like Father LeBlanc.
Remember those bumper stickers?
Not a bumper sticker. Father LeBlanc.
Father LeBlanc, no,
talking about New Resorto.
They made bumper stickers. Probably one, I think, made it.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're right, it was probably
That's a lot.
If you were right then, we were right now. And if we are wrong now, then you were wrong then. Right? I think that's it, right? So that's what this is. Which is simply saying truth is only one. Doesn't change. So if I change my opinion, truth doesn't change, but my opinion changed. So either I'm right now, in which case I was wrong then, or I was right then, in which case I'm wrong now. Can't be right both times. And he explains why. Does a good job of explaining it. So, unless to adopt a subjective conception of the truth, what was true in 1988 is no longer true. Right? That's a very good point. There's only you can't say we're right both times. The last solution, by means of which okay, so okay, a second. We are what you once were. We believe what you once believed. We worship as you once worshipped. If you are right, you were right then. We are right now. If you are wrong now, you were wrong then. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Keep it.
Okay,
Give it to Nova Sordo friends.
that's right. Yes. And so the what do you call it? So in any case, 98 no longer last solution. Blah blah blah. Okay. They no longer want to impose a council on us. Notice the switch to the subjective. This is a very important point. They no longer want to put the council upon us. What is your duty as a Catholic? You have to reject the council. So if they say they won't put it on us, it's exactly like the pimp that never is with a prostitute. He just simply arranges everything. If you approve it, then you're evil. End of problem. So we can't say that, well, as long as I don't have to commit the murder, as long as I don't have to rob a bank, all I'm doing is opening the door and driving the car. I drive the car every day, open the door every time I leave my house. You're going to arrest me for just because it happened at the door of a bank? And happened to be driving with some guys with an extra payload of gold in the back? Come on. Why are you going to arrest me? Because I was just driving home from the bank. So obviously, you're not just driving home from the bank. You're not just holding the door open. And you can't say, I didn't take the money out. I didn't shoot the police officer. Therefore, I am not guilty. No way. If you accept it, if you're silent about it, if you help, you're guilty. What do they do after these traditional masses, right? You say your traditional mass at 9 o'clock, and you go and get the little meat block, butcher block table, and you roll it back in front, in the middle. And then you take the little burlap garbage and set it back up for the Nova Soto Mass. But you didn't say it. That's no good. There's a good point that it makes here. So, the situation is just, by no means, in general, the turning point of the history of the church, by means of which seemingly anything can be justified. The situation has changed. We are witnesses, says our superior general, to a turning point in the history of the church. They no longer want to impose the council upon us. Bad. Pope Francis, quote, appears to be someone who would like us, who would like to see the whole world saved, that everyone have access to God. And he did say that in that quote. That was just last week. Remember the May 13th interview with Bishop Calais was put on the with the National Catholic Register. It was released on May 19th or something, just a few weeks ago. But this is from a direct quote from that May 13th interview of Bishop Calais to the American National Catholic Register. Okay? And so he points out clearly what the problem is. Where is it now? Whereas he continues, did Jesus not say, if you love me, keep my commandments? One may seriously ask himself if Pope Francis, who practically denies the commandments before the whole world, truly seems to save souls. On the other hand, did Archbishop Lefebvre not write in his spiritual journey his testament to his priests, quote, it is the strict duty of every priest and layman wishing to remain Catholic to separate themselves clearly from the conciliar church. Here's a word we have to emphasize in 2016. It's spelled C-L-E-A-R-L-Y. Clearly. We have to clearly separate ourselves from the conciliar church. Nowadays, people are spiritually separated, but they're inside. They're half and half. Archbishop Lefebvre, speaking as a Catholic, says very clearly, it is a strict duty of every priest and layman wishing to remain Catholic to separate himself clearly from the conciliar church, for so long as as she does not profess the tradition of the Church's magisterium and of the Catholic faith. And Bishop Tissier said in the March 25th interview, Lefebvre never, what was it? He never wanted the conversion of Rome. He didn't say wait for the conversion of Rome. How did he say it in that interview? He said, we don't have to wait for the conversion of Rome. Lefebvre said we don't need to wait for the conversion of Rome. But we do need, where he said it most clearly in the 74 Declaration. And right here, in the spiritual journey, and every time in between. Okay? So long as she does not profess the tradition of the Church's magisterium and the Catholic faith. Notice the condition. We can't forget that condition. When Rome professes the Catholic faith, fine. But until then, not fine. We need to wait till Rome professes the Catholic faith. As we were reminded by Bishop Tissier de Malloret not so long ago. He referring to Bishop Tissier's name. Some will say, it is not yet done. Wait until it's done. This is what I myself said to many of you, many among you, my dear faithful, for some years, hoping and believing sincerely that the authorities of our society would turn back. But I must face the evidence that they have not. Day after day, declaration after declaration, they continue to inoculate into the souls of the faithful and priests, and alike a pernicious error, which holds its legitimate to seek from the conciliar authority a recognition and jurisdiction that is made exceedingly dubious by this authority's daily betrayal of the faith. I'll say more than that. This error, which insinuates itself in the spirits who teach, causes even priests known for their doctrinal intransigence, this being a virtue, to become less and less combative to the point where they will soon be ready to betray everything. Here's a little bit of a mistake here. It's a good desire of Father, but a little bit of a mistake. And the mistake is, see here what Father Walt is saying, that we need to wait until it's done. And essentially he's saying, don't wait until it's done, because they're committed to doing it. Something like the argument of, we asked a question in moral theology, supposing that you are a little midget and that you are a weakling and you're not very strong. The Incredible Hulk comes over to you and says, I'm going to kill you tomorrow, right? Now you know that he's going to really kill you tomorrow. You also know that when you fist fight with him, you're going to lose. He's going to squash you up and stick you inside a little Folgers Crystals can, and you are going to lose, and you're going to die. And he's really going to kill you tomorrow. So, some moral theologians say, well, since you know he's really going to kill you tomorrow, and he made that very clear, you can get a little pistol, and you can make a visit and do a preemptive strike. And remove the problem before he shows up tomorrow. Now, this is not certain, but some moral theologians say that you can do that. They say, well, it's truly self-defense. They argue it's truly self-defense because he's really going to kill you. And you can't beat him in a fist fight, so you shoot him. And therefore, normally you can't use a gun against a fist. Normally you can't use a gun against a fist. But since he's going to kill you with his fist, and you can't kill him with your fist, in that case, you might be able to pull out a gun, okay, and shoot him. So some moral theologians argue that. Maybe it's not right, but it sounds good. So, in any case, so he's arguing in that way. Since we're going to go into Rome, and Rome is going to gobble us up, and the society has committed itself to this, and we're talking about it more and more, I don't have to wait. In fact, I think this is, it's like that moral theology argument I was just given to you, but in fact, I think it's the wrong argument. It's a good argument from the moral perspective. But the more correct argument is this. Bishop Belay and the mainstream society says in its official documentation, new mass equals generally promulgated. As a Catholic, I am obliged sub gravi, which means under pain of mortal sin, I am obliged sub gravi to say no to that. This is very similar to supposing a man comes to you, puts a gun to your head and says, if you walk into that chapel, on this Sunday and go to Mass, I'm going to kill you. You have two choices. You can walk in and get shot, or you can say, you know what, I think I'm going to miss Mass this Sunday. Now, if you choose to miss Mass that Sunday, that's okay, because there are excusing causes for missing Mass on Sunday, and the guy putting the gun to your head is a very reasonable excusing cause. However, if the same guy comes to you and says, you will spit on this crucifix, you will deny the Catholic faith, then it doesn't matter if he skins you alive, tortures you, you can never do it. So one of the traps and one of the mistakes I think that's happening amongst many of the resistant priests, good priests, is that they're looking at things from a moral perspective more than from the perspective of faith. The trouble with the moral perspective, like the example I just gave you, some moral theologians say, yes, Pee Wee Herman can shoot Lou Ferrigno. He can do it. Now, others say, no, it's too bad. He's just going to have to go to confession and wait till he dies. Maybe because sometimes you get lucky in a fight. Sometimes the big guy doesn't always win. Sometimes the little guy does win. So he just has to wait. So some of you moral theologians say one thing, other moral theologians say another. We've got a moral theological dispute. But there's no moral theological dispute in you must spit on this crucifix or I'm going to kill you. So likewise, when we look at the battle of the resistance, when we see the change of faith, we have to say no, period. If it's just this deal with Rome, the danger of losing the faith, then you can argue both sides. If the danger is very, very, very heavy, then you can say no to the society. If the danger is light, well then you can't say no to the society. And then each one has to judge on their own whether or not it's very, very serious or whether it's very, very light. And you have all these complicated considerations of how serious is it, how close is it for me to lose my faith, how far is it for me to lose my faith. So we have a fairly complicated situation. And so after 4 years, Father Waugh says, no, it's gone too far. And he explains good reasons why from the moral perspective it's gone too far. But the moral perspective is always a weak argument, and there's always some kind of answer, right? There's always some kind of other opinion, right? That some saint or theologian can pull out, right? So this error, which distinguishes itself in the spirits of each, the power of the Spirit, causes even priests known for their doctrinal intransigence to become less and less combative to the point where they will soon be ready to betray everything. Because it is argument from proximate occasion of sin. The way we argue in the resistance is the new teaching is false, therefore everyone must say no. The argument of the other side is the new teaching is dangerous, therefore it's legitimate to say no. You see the difference? One says no, other says yes, and they're both right. Both right. It's like, for instance, if one of these little kids here eats what I call fasting, they will die of gluttony. So because our bodies are different sizes. So what is fasting for me is gluttony for a 3-year-old. So when you start talking about degrees, there's an infinite number of possibilities. That's why it's so complicated. It's so complicated. It is complicated if we're just talking about degrees and danger. But that's really not what our situation is. It's not about degrees and danger. It's about an error. So this is accomplished, I've got on page 2 here, this is accomplished in a gradual way without us realizing the ambiguities introduced. He's talking about the danger of staying inside the mainstream society. It began by convincing us that the motu proprio, which put the sacrifice of our Lord Jesus Christ on equal footing with, and even subordinate to, what our historians have very justly called the Mass of Luther, was welcome and beneficial. And it was called welcome and beneficial. Remember in 2007 and 2009, many of us refused. I don't know what they did up here, whoever the priest was at that time. But I was one of the priests. I was in India at the time. But, where I'm not doing any Te Deum. I'm not giving thanks for this 2007 debacle of this ecclesia, this motu proprio. And I'm not going to do a Te Deum for the 2009 quote-unquote lifting of excommunications. Many priests refused. I don't know who was a priest here at that time in Portugal. Not 2007. He was in Ireland at that time. 2007 had to be Father Kimball and somebody, whoever the superior was.
Father Blue, I think. Father Kimball left in 05.
Oh, okay, that's after that.
That's
And
what we
Father
came.
Blue
was here for a year.
He was before that. He was there.
Father
before that.
Johnson.
Father Blue was there
Father
before that.
Johnson for a year. Father Blue, Father
Well,
Johnson.
2007 was somebody else then. Father Garvey or somebody. It doesn't
Well,
matter.
Father Darby was here, and Father.
Did they sing the Te Deum? Some of us refused, some didn't.
They
You have
did.
to say
They
that?
did in Winona.
What?
Winona did.
Winona did, of course. That's,
Definitely.
that's headquarters. But I think many priests didn't. I don't know if they did here or not. Oh, you didn't do it. My brother didn't do it. Many others didn't do it. You know, depends on your priest. Because we're all told to do it, and many of us said, forget it, we're not doing it. And we even preached against it. I preached against it. You know, but at that time there weren't any consequences for preaching against it. At that time we weren't punished for that. You know, so it would be later that we'd be punished for that. And so this is accomplished in a gradual way. Okay, these again point out the dangers. Massive Luther. They say to us, does the motu proprio not produce marvelous results? I noticed myself, and you may have noticed it here, 2007 was a magic year. Before 2007, people went from Indo to SSPX. That's how the funnel worked. After 2007, people went from SSPX to Indo. You may have noticed that here. I've noticed that myself, big time. Pre-2007, Indo is a stepping stone to SSPX. After 2007, many faithful SSPX use the SSPX as a stepping stone to Indo. It's still going on. To change direction. So that's not a marvelous result. I would consider that a bad result. But since when have practical results been more important than the purity of the doctrine of Christ? Since when has truth profited from human compromise? Do not do evil that there may come good. The apostle told us in Romans chapter 3. Next, they convinced us it was acceptable to sing at the solemn Te Deum. We'll just skip through that. Not put it into practice in paragraph the advice of St. John, nor that of our Lord Jesus Christ. Beware of false prophets. So we're still looking at the dangers of the change in this year. Beware of false prophets. In discussion after discussion, after meeting, we eventually silence our suspicions, which are more than legitimate and healthy in the face of persons who deny the kingship of our Lord Jesus Christ. Again, he's making good points, but they're points about persons. They're points about morality. Whereas our primary point should really be, it's just a false doctrine. We can't accept it, right? So then, is there any wonder then that they happily grant us jurisdiction for confessions, which was never lacking anyway, so that's correct. How can we claim that we are asking for nothing, but that Rome gives everything? And they're still saying that. John, you just said that yesterday. Rome has given us and we're asking for nothing. We've asked for 1,000 things since the year 2000. We've been asking and asking and asking, going back and forth with documents, meetings continuously, arrangements of the lifting of giving the permission of the confessions.
It seems like the Society in Menzingen doesn't know that we all know about Grec and have known about it for a long time.
But not just Grec. You don't need to even know about
no, but
Grec.
I mean, but that goes back to 2007.
It's a good point. That
yeah.
was the beginning. That's
right.
true.
Yeah.
But since that was 1997, since then there have been all kinds of communications between Bishop Millay and Rome, visiting Rome, called to Rome, coming to Rome, then the bishops visiting our houses, part of a reconciliation. That's called working back and forth.
Even in Father Schmidberger's that 3-page letter, he basically indicates that. They're coming to us.
Yeah, Bishop Father Schmidberger indicates.
Ours is a different case. It's not like the other ones.
And in fact, that's another point that's false. Father Schmidberger says, and apparently the BCA said the same thing, they're coming to us, we're not going to them. But they forget about the fact Rome went to Dom Gerard. Not Dom Gerard to Rome. Rome went to, Father Lagarrigue, right? Rome went to these guys, these 9 organizations. Rome went to them. And Rome's coming to us. And by the way, not just Rome. It was a guy by the name of Cardinal Ratzinger, and Cardinal Ratzinger, and Cardinal Ratzinger, and Cardinal Ratzinger. He invited Michael Davies to lunch or dinner in Rome. And Michael Davies went soft on the new man the next week and became the president of Una Voce, right? He invited him over. He's not even an organization. He's just a very outspoken, famous sort of man. So it's false to say that we're different than them. It's the same procedure. It's not true. He points out some of these things here. Okay, so he's going through the slow steps. Okay, not put it into practice, blah, blah, blah. That's good. And then, the new direction of our society is imposed on priests, on many priests who have never desired it. Enforced silences, transfers, promotions, trials, threats, promises, exclusions, all become justifiable when they work to defend the position of the society, quote unquote, which is in fact, as always in a revolution, the position of a minority, which has taken power and which deftly manipulates the passive majority. That's a very good point of Father Wall. Very well said. The position of a minority who have taken power and which deftly manipulates a passive majority. That's correct. Good point. So that the priests of the society have been manipulated. It's on the top of page 3 there. I'm jumping a little bit. But they have manipulated. They have, a silent majority, and that's true. But again, that the priests have been punished, promote transfers, silences, trials, threats, promises, exclusions, all justifiable to promote the quote-unquote position of society. Following my sermon of April 17th, besides the desperate reactions of certain colleagues, they ordered me to be silent. All right, as Father Hugo pointed out the other day, I can say the same thing. They ordered Father Hugo to be silent. They ordered me to be silent. Father Wall was ordered to be silent a month ago. We were ordered to be silent 4 years ago. And so we were ordered to be silent. We're not the only ones that were ordered to be silent. Many were ordered to be silent. But Father Wall also. They ordered me to be silent. He's not an isolated case. Many cases. They wished me to swear on my priesthood to speak no more from the pulpit on the question of an accord with apostate Rome. We just spoke to someone yesterday, former seminarian and so on. He said, well, it's true they're not talking about the accord with Rome, but they're still talking about modernism is bad and so on, and they're still talking of faith and so on. Yes, you can talk about your catechism, as Father Hugo mentions very frequently, or used to mention before anyway, in his sermons very frequently about the Pax priests in Hungary. What did they tell them in the 1950s? You can talk about your catechism all you want. You can talk about your faith all you want. You can stay in your churches and have your masses. Don't criticize either directly or indirectly in any way communism. And you will have peace. Hence the people came up with the name peace priests, Pax priests. Cardinal Mazzenti would not be one of those priests. Neither would other priests who had to go underground. But when they were going underground, there were the approved priests. They could say, I said you can only get married once. I said that, you should, be a good Catholic. Oh, you shouldn't say being a good Catholic means you can't be a communist. I just didn't say that being a good Catholic means you've got to be against Moscow. I just didn't say that. But they don't need to know that just because Moscow and communism is in my parish. So these are the silences. And he said, no, well, how can we continue to be silent? They wish me to swear on my priesthood to speak no more from the pulpit on the question of an accord with apostate Rome. You have many other subjects on which you can speak, they told me. Naturally, I am conscious that the principal subject of preaching is not the joining of our society to Rome, but the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. But I would note, you are my witnesses, dear brothers, that was the first time in 5 years of ministry that I had spoken on the question from the pulpit. I refuse to be silenced. However, I promise to warn my superiors before treating the subject from the pulpit again. If you intend to speak of it again, they told me, you will have the right to confess and say Mass. You cannot preach. Otherwise, leave the society and say what you wish. That was the command. They didn't tell me to leave the society. They just, smashed me instead. Leave the society and say what you wish. That is what I am doing, brethren, because a priest must preach and alert his flock to the wolves who threaten to devour them. And that's true. We have to point out two things about obligation of a priest. We must point out the errors. But we can't just point out the errors. We must also point out the wolves who are promoting the errors. Not necessarily every single wolf, but at least the key wolves. And we must say, stay away from these wolves. But why do we say stay away from the wolves? Because the wolves are bringing in the error. So we must always condemn the error, no exceptions to that. And we must often condemn the wolves, if we can find out who the wolves are. We must be sure that they're wolves or that they're working for the wolves. And therefore, yes, we must warn the sheep against the wolves. And so we can't just say, don't follow the truth. We truly must warn against the wolves. So that if someone in authority in the church, such as the Pope, the greatest authority in the church, is telling us that all the religions are okay, and I don't believe in the Catholic God, and et cetera, well then we have to say, I'm sorry, but the Holy Father, Paul VI, the Holy Father, John Paul II, and Benedict XVI, and now Pope Francis, these Holy Fathers are communicating another faith, the true faith. Don't listen to them. Don't listen to them. So we must point out the wolves. We do have to do that. And that is correct. I have no absolute certainty that the society will join itself to Rome. Continuing there on page 3. Nevertheless, I have moral certainty that they will do so, given the clear, express, and reiterated will of both Rome and the society to arrive at an arrangement. And given also the absorption these last months of the last episcopal voices, which firmly opposed it, that God, I think especially, I'm probably speaking of Bishop Tissier, just, giving in a month and a half ago, or 2 months ago. That God preserve us from this tragedy. This will, in spite of my departure, continue to be my fervent prayer. He wants to save from the deal with Rome. I think here it's good. I would say rather, if you're going to stand for the error, make the deal with Rome. If you're not going to stand for the error and you're going to stand for the truth, then of course, go back to the Society of St. Vincent, Way of Archers of Lafayette. But if you're going to stand for the error, please make the deal with Rome. Because let your mind and your actions be connected. Don't claim to be against Rome in your actions and with Rome in your heart and your mind. If you're going to be with modernist Rome in your heart and mind, then be with modernist Rome in your actions. So in fact, I think it would be a blessing for the church if the Society of St. Vincent finishes this deal with Rome. It would be a blessing. Because now the excuse or the false statement that, see, we're still unapproved, therefore we're Catholic. Again, that's a negative argument. A negative argument. The modernists don't approve of the Protestant Creation Museum in Kentucky. But they're not Catholics. When you walk through there, there's a statue of Martin Luther. We had one of our visitors from Belgium come over, and we brought him to the Creation Museum 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And so he had a photo op done with Martin Luther. So he stood in front of Martin Luther with the statue of Martin Luther. Then he was like this. And then he had different ops. He was choking him. He had a photo op. So choking Martin Luther statue, beating up Martin Luther, and he had the other guy holding his phone with pictures, and all the Protestants walking around. Going, what's he doing? Well, he wasn't happy about Martin Luther. So, but the thing is that, but the modernists didn't like that museum either, because it's against evolution. But does that mean it's a Catholic museum? No. It's a heretical museum. They promote a false faith. So that they're against evolution, well, that's good. But that they're in favor of Martin Luther, that's bad. So we can't just a negative union. And we're getting here, I pray the society doesn't go with Rome. That doesn't help the society. The society being outside of Rome materially is a great tool for the modernists to bring people inside of Rome spiritually and formally. People can say, I'm not approved, I'm with the Society of St. Pius X, but they think like modernists. And they're accepting the modern ideology. They're accepting the Vatican II. They're accepting miracles. They're accepting the new Mass, etc. The Society just put on its website of the SSPX.org US website just a month ago about miracles in the new Mass. And how this is a proof that since the church authorities approved Cardinal Ratzinger and Cardinal Bergoglio before he became the Pope, approved of these things, well then they must be true. And that's what is that doing? It's deceiving the faithful to accept the approvals of Cardinal Ratzinger and Pope Francis. And also, one mistake, which seems like a small one, but it's really not. Bishop Fillet called Pope Benedict in that interview several times. He's not Pope Benedict. There's only one Pope, and that's Pope Francis. The man who's wearing a white outfit and calls himself Pope Benedict is Cardinal Ratzinger. He's not to be called Pope, right? He resigned. If you say Pope Benedict, you mean him before the day of his resignation and after the day of his election. Before the day of his election, he was Cardinal Ratzinger. After the day of his resignation, he's Cardinal Ratzinger. We cannot call him Pope. You see, he's not the Pope. Benedict is not the Pope, and we should not call him the Pope. He retired. He quit. He resigned. And therefore, we shouldn't call him Pope. And Bishop Fillet has been calling Pope Benedict multiple times. And that's really not good. We shouldn't do that. Not Pope. Yeah.
The latest thing last week out of Rome is that the Pope, when he did that resignation, he did not resign his spiritual duties. So he is, quote, the spiritual Pope, and Bergoglio is the physical Pope.
Yeah, that's the argument of Father Kramer, right? Which would mean what?
This is just in this past week. It came out of Rome. One of the cardinals is making that statement.
And then you have two choices: either Pope Benedict is the Pope, in which case Bergoglio is the cardinal, right? Yeah. Or Francis is the Pope, in which case Benedict is the cardinal.
Well, if you want the check signed, you go to Bergoglio. If you want a blessing, you go to Pope Ratzinger, or whatever his name is.
Right, yeah.
That's what he's saying.
It's all deliberate confusion to do what? To change the papacy in the next step of Vatican II. What does that mean? Rome is getting worse, and Rome is implementing Vatican II more and more. That's the issue. And I think one of the mistakes, these are very good points Father Raw is making. He's making very good points. But it's fighting in the wrong battlefield, we would argue. We don't need to say we're being approved by I need to not compromise. I need to not do this. Remember, it's like a doctor coming into a ward and saying, boy, at least I don't have cancer. I'm glad my heart's doing fine. When you're a heart surgeon, you don't come in and tell the guy, my heart's fine, I'm sorry about how you're feeling, but I'm feeling pretty good. In fact, I gotta go out and play tennis with my doctor. Says I gotta play tennis right now. Anyway, I hope you get better. Okay? So, and so obviously the doctor, when he comes in, he's supposed to fix the heart of the guy who needs the heart transplant, which is immoral, by the way. But nonetheless, who needs his heart surgery. He needs his whatever needs to be done to his heart. So the priest is a doctor. I'm not supposed to come here and say, well, I can tell you, for instance, that I go to Mass every day. So why am I traveling here? Because it's not the duty of the priest to say Mass every day. You know how many times I'm obliged to say Mass? All priests are obliged to say Mass 3 times a year. That's how many times we're obliged to say Mass. There are 365 days in the average year. We're obliged to say Mass at least 3 times a year. That's it. I say my breviary every day, but I don't have to say Mass every day. It's a custom for the last 1,000 years to say Mass every day. But I don't have to. Why am I here? Because you need the Mass. Because you need the faith. Because you need to be instructed in the faith. And when I study, when I look over things, even though it's beneficial for me to do that, it's for the purpose primarily of instructing you, the purpose primarily of passing on the faith. Because that's my obligation as a doctor of the church, as a priest. That's basically a doctor of the church. Not a doctor as in the canonized doctors of the church, but a teacher, a medical man in the church. So, and here I think that Father Law is a little bit forgetting that. A little bit. It's not his duty as a priest to be good himself, even though he should be good himself. It is his duty as a priest to help others be good. That's why St. Teresa of Avila said, I would rather have, as a spiritual director, a mediocre, not so holy priest who knows the spiritual life and the faith and the saints good and therefore can instruct me well than a really holy priest who's sitting around us and is going to tell me the wrong thing. Right. So obviously both priests have the faith. If they're heretics, and problem over, right? But both priests have the faith. He says, I need the one who's going to instruct me correctly because that's the duty of the priest. And so we have to be instructing correctly. Okay, don't know with absolute certainty that besides going to join the absorption fund. In the meanwhile, having on the day of my baptism renounced not only Satan and his works, but also his seductions, I cannot accept that my immortal soul be sold to the conciliar sect. This is very excellent, what Father is saying here. This is again on that page 3, I think. I cannot accept that my immortal soul be sold to the conciliar sect, nor accept even that it be put up for sale. And as a shepherd, I can't allow your soul to be sold to the conciliar sect, nor for your soul to be put up for sale, right? It is very correct, very good point. Consequently, the fact that the superiors of the society have shown on numerous occasions their amenability to a practical accord in the absence of Rome's conversion suffices for me to take this step prudently, not before having prayed at length and taken counsel with wise priests. There is no question for me whatever of remaining silent about what is being done. I have kept silence too long, hoping and assuring you, brethren, that the society superiors would eventually open their eyes. The more time passed, the more was I forced to accept the evidence that those who lead us do not intend to turn back. And that's true. Grace of God can change anything, but they don't intend to turn back. I must confess that to speak openly of the treachery we are living through is a very delicate business if one remains within the society, which is why I'm leaving. For the ability to preach the truth in its integrity, since I must someday make an answer for each of the souls entrusted to me, to keep silent was no longer possible without making myself guilty before God. Do you see the problem? He's right about the fact. Remaining in the Society of St. Pius X means no longer having the ability to preach the truth in its integrity. That means we're not receiving the truth in its integrity, and guess what? We're in danger of losing that truth. Very serious danger to the faith. He's right about that. In the past, I have severely criticized those we call the resistance, which is like Father Hugo. And so on. So, those we call the resistance, but whom others call the subversions, and still others fidelity. I must say that besides the fact that I did not, at that time, see things as clearly as, by the grace of God, I now do, I was reacting mainly to their misbehavior, to the misbehavior of certain colleagues. I was reacting mainly to the misbehavior of colleagues who visited our province, which is the province of Quebec, by the way. This is Quebec, Canada. Who visited our province, those who refused the betrayal imposed, and who, though clear-sighted, were rather cavalier, much to the discredit of the courageous stance taken by those who refused the betrayal imposed upon us. I will try with God's grace to avoid the attitudes I have denounced and to devote my energy to rebuilding rather than to badgering those who wish to place us in Rome's hands. That said, to denounce errors and deceptions remains a necessary duty, which with God's aid I will fulfill. So you can see this is a little side note paragraph. The priests referred to, there's only four priests that have entered the province of Quebec. Myself, Father Hugo, Father Pino, and Father Rieu. Father Pino and Father Rieu entered more or less quietly into the place. Father Hugo and I entered more or less in an open way, and loudly in an open way. We were requested to come to Quebec in 2012. We didn't show up in 2013. It wasn't one of our original places, but we did come. and so that he says it's against the cavalier attitude of mainly myself, of condemning, badgering other priests and giving a bad name to the resistance. So he doesn't give any precisions, but that probably means me. Okay, and but in any case, with regard to myself and Father Hugo, you know us. We come around and preach the faith in each of the parishes, and we do the same thing in every parish, including the French one up there in Quebec. And that is, we denounce the errors of Vatican II. We denounce the errors of Bishop Fillet, and now we have to unfortunately add the errors of Bishop Williamson saying similar things to Bishop Fillet. But we're not denouncing the individuals as persons, and we're not badgering them and attacking them as individuals. And also we point out that we recommend that people should not attend the mainstream society masses because of the official position of the society, and not because of the badness of the individual priests. We assume that all the priests are good. We know, of course, there's some, bad priests amongst the society. Of course there are. Bad priests everywhere. And our Lord promised that there will be bad priests in the church from the time of Judas until the end of the world. So there will always be some bad priests. We may not know who they are, but we know they're going to be there. We're not concerned about that. We rather have to stand for the truth of the faith and so on. So here he's just maybe following the gossip, so to speak. But, that's okay. So this is a little, misbehavior of certain colleagues who visited our province of Quebec, which means myself and Father Hugo, and who, though clear-sighted, were rather cavalier, came in too loudly and so on. So that's a little anti-us statement, but that's no big deal. It's not a problem. I don't expect everything to be perfect. And so, like I say, the good thing is the Father is standing for the truth and beginning to preach it. He's just beginning to understand how deep it is right now. Many clear-sighted priests do not dare to act against the imposition. I believe the principal reason for restraining them is the fear of breaking unity of the institutions that have with such difficulty been built up. How accept that in dividing the faithful, we risk contributing to the closure of a chapel? The reply is that faithful priests are not the origin of the division brewing in our ranks. And that's very true. This is a point made by the English priest, Father Clifton, remember a letter he wrote back in 2012 or 13? When he wrote a letter to Bishop Fillet saying, you say that the priests of the resistance, just newly formed at that time, just a few of us at that time, that they are causing division. They're not causing division. What's causing division is your new direction. What's causing division is your new commands. What's causing division is what you are doing. So don't say they're causing division. And this is Father Wall saying more or less the same thing. Father Clifton puts a little bit more, he gives a little more full explanation, but saying essentially the same thing. The reply is that faithful priests are not the origin of the division brewing in our ranks, but the very authorities of the society who would have us to believe that we are participating in a turning point in the situation of the church, when in fact it is not the situation that has changed, but only their minds. That is correct. The situation is just Vatican II in the next stage of development, but only their minds. Dear brothers, if the directors of the society continue to sow distrust and confusion by their mistaken ideas, the division will swell, and it may become necessary to burst it open in our region for the common good. It may become necessary. I would argue it's been necessary already since the clear written statement of the Society of 2012 saying that Vatican II is tainted with error and no longer in error, and that we can accept to be under the modernist authorities, the wishable conditions of the 2012 General Chapter. For my part, I would that the Lord spare me from having prematurely to break the unity of the few chapels we have in French Canada. That is why I've decided to remain for the moment in the Maritimes. So, Father, we got Canada surrounded now. Canada is a small country of about 4,500 miles east and west. And so on the far west coast, you got Father Gerard in Vancouver sitting on the ocean. Then the other ocean on the other side is where Father Wall is. Up in Nova Scotia, That's the area they call the Maritimes, so up in Nova Scotia. And so, in fact, from Quebec City, which is kind of straight north of Boston, Massachusetts, to give you an idea, it's a 12-hour drive going further east. So, it's way over there. Okay, he's way over. And some small chapels over there. So he's just telling you his region where he is. And I have decided to remain for the moment in the Maritimes. The faithful in these parts lack frequent access to the true Mass and true sacraments. They are mostly without spiritual help. They raise their children without the support of the church. Therefore, I thought it best to keep to this region and concentrate my efforts on developing these small groups that have so little access to the sacraments, hoping one day to return to these communities into the hands of the society, only made larger and more fervent by the grace of God and by my ministry. For this is my greatest hope, that the society turns back in a clear and unequivocal manner, good, that I may return these missions to it, and that I may myself re-enter its ranks, profiting anew from the priestly fellowship offered there. I cling to no illusions that miracles are always possible. However, it remains clear that when the situation deteriorates, more become necessary to tempt the souls of Quebec who feel betrayed and deceived. So in any case, and he is there in the Maritimes. So I think overall it's a very good letter of young Father Waugh. And but that, one of the challenges you have is, because in Quebec, we love all our faithful, but Quebec, they're frog speaking. So, it's a French speaking place. Of course, most of them do speak English. Father Hugo and myself go and say Mass there. And I've been begging various frog priests. Remember, it's well known that I'm not a great lover of frog. I don't have any frogolatry. I have a hard time with frogs. And yet, everywhere, ever since I've been a priest, I'm always having to deal with frogs. Always. And so, but in any case, but no, they're all souls are loved by God, and we got to help them. But I do know it would be a great help for the resistance in Quebec if we could find a priest that speaks French to go and say Mass for them. But I can't find a priest to speak French to say Mass for them. And so of our resistance, we have 2 Quebecois priests now, Father Gerard, who's in Vancouver, and now Father Waugh, who just joined yesterday. He's going to be on the other side, and they're English speaking over there too, by the way, where he is. It's primarily English speaking in Nova Scotia, in that area. I know they've mixed and all that. So he's in there. So they've got him surrounded. But going to hopefully soon he'll come and help the people there in Quebec. And some priests have come to help once or twice, but it's very difficult to get them to come consistently. So Father and I still traveling, visiting some of the people there. So in any case, I think there, Father Waugh, it's good that he's in the standing for the truth, but I think that the weakness is that it's more from the moral perspective rather than the dogmatic perspective. And the dogmatic perspective is the one that we need to be standing on. And then also that he's going to help the people there in the Maritimes primarily because they don't have Mass very often. But in fact, remember, none of us, it's not that we don't have Mass very often, it's the faith that matters. And even before Vatican II, there were always many parishes in the mountains, many parishes in the country who had Mass once a year or once a month, and not every week and not every day. Even before Vatican II, there were many places that have Mass 3 times a year, like probably Bishop Archbishop Lefebvre said. But they have to have the faith always. And our battle is primarily the faith. So the very positive thing is there's another priest standing for the faith here, and then he's going to try to help those people. They're 100% very much against the deal with Rome. So in that sense, it's encouraging. And hopefully, Father will help some of our people over there in Quebec, and of course, our battle is not one of trying to be quote unquote cavalier, whatever that means, but rather to just profess the faith and keep the battle and run with faith. So I think I'll close with that. And I think that we got to keep our battle, faith, and that's it, But it's very encouraging that Father is joining us, so to speak, this yesterday. And but then again, the challenge is we need to work together as much as we can. And what we're seeing is that there is a movement within the resistance to keep us all divided. And we've got to be pulling together as much as we can. But like it says in the quote to Father Waugh, from Mortalium Animos, we can't have a federation that's a negative federation, but a federation of faith. Federation of faith. And we've got to have a federation of faith. And this is the what we really want to have. And You know, and that's going to be our battle. You know, so and I think that's sufficient there. And if we have any questions, whatever, then we'll back in. Yeah.
Well, you used this example down in Minneapolis too, and that was, this is not related to this, but it's something that you think needs clarification.
Yes.
There's been tens of thousands of Catholics who died for to go to Mass. You know, the Romans persecuted them to go to Mass, and you use this example of somebody holds a gun to your head and says, "Don't go to Mass." That doesn't seem.
No, they weren't dying for not going to Mass, but for the faith, right? Because they were going to what do you call it? Have to give up the faith. Not a particular Mass. Like, for instance, you know how on Sunday if you have to work, if you're sick, all positive laws have exceptions. Negative laws have no exceptions. And so the positive law of going to Mass on Sunday is if you're on a boat, for instance, you can't go to Mass, right?
Right. I see that example, but the particular one you bring up, I mean, they were killed. They weren't killed with guns, but to go to Mass means death. And yet
that's why we say he has two rights. He can say, I'm going to go anyway, because he's being held from doing something good. And he can be a martyr by doing that. But because he's not obliged to go to Mass if there's an excusing cause, right? He can say, well, the guy putting a gun to my head is an excusing cause. You see what I mean? But there's no excusing cause from give up the faith. There's no excusing cause from accepting a lie, even a venial sin lie. There's no excusing cause from anything that is intrinsically evil. No excusing cause. There are excusing causes of going to Mass on Sunday. So since there are excusing causes from going to Mass on Sunday, if a guy puts a gun to your head, now if putting a gun to your head says, if you go to that Mass, it means you're not Catholic, or something like that, well, then you're obliged to go. You see what I mean? If that is a denial of faith. But if you're staying here right now because, you know, I don't know, there could be many reasons, because he's robbing your house. He doesn't want you to go out, right? Okay? But so that there could be an excusing cause. Okay, he's robbing my house on Sunday. He wants everybody to stay in, and if we go out, we're going to be shot. Okay, I'll wait. See what I mean? There can be, my point is, this is a whole problem with arguing from the moral perspective. In every moral case, you can dig out somewhere in a hole somewhere in your basket of tricks. Well, there's an exception. See what I mean? Well, here's another exception. And that's why arguing from the basis of morality is a very dangerous way to argue, because what you're doing is giving people excuses for not standing for the truth. You see what I mean? There are excusing causes for not going to Mass on Sunday, but there's no excusing cause from believing Jesus Christ is God. There's no excusing cause from doing anything that's potentially evil, including a lie. Even a lie not about the faith, right? Any lie. So if you have to die rather than tell a lie, even a quote-unquote small lie, well, then you have to die. Right? And the trouble is, and this is a good point, he makes very good points in this letter. Well, he does make good points. But they tend to be more, like you can see, if you look at it very closely, you could find reasons to not, like it's well justified that he's doing what he's doing, but do I have to do what he's doing? Maybe, maybe not. See what I mean? See what I mean? So that where our argument is that no, there's no maybes. We admit there are maybe situations that exist. This is not one of them. This is not one of them, because the society is saying something that's against the Holy Roman Catholic faith, and it's saying something that's also a lie. For instance, when the society priests are now saying that some of them are, the new Mass is technically legitimately promulgated, but that doesn't mean it's legitimate morally. That statement is a lie. Because not only is the new Mass not legitimate morally, but also Rome did not follow the technical rules of legitimate promulgation. And we know that. We know that. They didn't follow the rules of what a law is. They didn't follow the rules of how to abrogate the old law, how to implement the new law, who is applied, who the law applies to. It's not an ordinance. Therefore, even technically, it's not a law. So there equals a lie, or saying a falsity. And I know it's false. Therefore, if I say that it's legitimately legal, the new Mass, even though that's not directly against the faith, that statement, it's a lie. And I know it's a lie. Therefore, it's intrinsically evil for me to say they technically followed the rules. No, they didn't. You see, no, they didn't. So that's why I say the example of the Mass on any positive command. Mass on Sunday, you know, I can't think of other examples. This is the easiest example. But any positive command to which there are exceptions, you can make exceptions. You see, but there are no exceptions to the faith. This is our problem. Faith is the problem. Therefore, there's no exceptions. Everybody has to say no to it. Yes.
Father, I run a business, and at a society priest town we once, I display the crucifix and Our Lady and Sacred Heart pictures. Mm-hmm. And he said, if the state were to come in and tell you to take it down, you wouldn't be under mortal sin. Go ahead and take them down. And wouldn't that be against my faith if I took them down? Because it's a state-ridden thing.
Right, you mean take them down from your
down on the wall, from the walls in the house.
Yeah, I would say it would be
because I'm licensed by the state.
Right. I would say that you shouldn't take them down. But again, here's the problem. Whenever you talk about these precise details, which are quote-unquote positive commands, you can pull out, you know, the quote of St. Alphonsus says this, and the quote of St. Thomas says that, and you can start playing these, you know, the Jewish, 513 precepts, rules, you know. But I would say here you're being asked to deny your faith, and you cannot, right?
It's in a place of business.
Yes.
So that doesn't matter either.
What?
It's not his home.
Oh no, that's true.
Business.
But again, when you look at the time of the persecution of the church, our ancestors kept it secret that they were Catholic. Like Saint Perpetua and Saint Felicitas that were mentioned in the Mass, right? Their husbands did not know that they were Catholic. When they found out, they killed them, right? So they did not publicly profess their faith to their husbands. Their husbands didn't even know they were Catholic, right? When their husbands found out, I forget which one was pregnant, the other one already had the baby. But in both cases, I think that one was martyred with the baby in the womb, the other one was martyred with the baby already born. I forget which one was which between the two. But they're the ones we mentioned in the Mass. So that's why, for instance, look at the example of the martyrs. Sometimes the persecutor comes and they run. Another time the persecutor comes and they say, now is the time. You see what I mean? And there we have to go by the inspiration of the Holy Ghost and by the circumstances of the battle, right? You see, so that sometimes we find both examples amongst the saints. Perpetua and Felicitas, their husbands did not know they were Catholic, and they never told them. They got found out. Also, as many of the girls that were martyred at the age of 13, they refused the marriage, and they wouldn't say why they refused the marriage. Because they had, married because they became perpetual virgins and Catholics, right? They were then suspected of being Christian, suspected of being Catholic. They were then denounced. Then they asked them to burn incense before the idol to make sure that they were Catholic, and sure enough, they refused to burn incense, and they were put to death, right? So you see the example there of the saints in which they didn't put the crucifix up in their own house. You see what I mean? So you see how in a situation where already a Catholic society and they come in to take it out. The other one is they don't know we're Catholic and we're having secret masses like in the case of England, right? So in what stage of the battle are we? You see what I mean? The priest went around and said, my name is, I'm actually a janitor, right? You see what I mean? What?
Pro.
Like Father Pro, they say Robert Southwell, etc. And so you can see how when you get to those particular cases, you're going to have to follow you don't know how it's going to happen until it happens. You know what I mean? There's so many ways it can happen. So many ways it can tell you to take it down. And when they say take it down, one way is, oh no, this is a true giving up of the faith, forget it, right? It can happen another way in which, okay, I'll take it down. See what I mean? So there, yeah.
One of the problems that I've got, Father, is all of these examples you have, they're from 1,000 years ago. They're really not appropriate to the real world right now.
No, if it was appropriate then, it's appropriate
now.
No, wait.
I'll take it on. You can argue with it later.
Okay.
want to get, that's fine. Go ahead. Continue, John.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
I think what people are looking for is, in terms of now, the way it is right now,
Right.
and these stories, nobody's holding
Here's
the
what I'm
gun.
going to say about it.
Nobody's holding the gun.
I'll say the way it is now.
Nobody's holding
In fact,
the
it's
gun.
one of our arguments against some of the. I can't. The way it is now is, I can have a crucifix in my house.
Right.
I can have a crucifix in my office. They're not telling me I can get a permit to say Mass in the White House lawn if I wanted to.
True.
Right?
Right.
So at this point, I can say I'm Mass in the White House lawn. I just have to get a permit. I can say Mass at the airport. I can say Mass public. But we're not at the point of persecution yet.
Right.
Now, when the time of persecution comes, then I'll have to deal with that. You see what I mean? Because persecution can come in many ways. And we can't deal with that until it comes.
Okay, but what I'm getting at is the business about only going to your Mass, only going to, quote, a resistance Mass, not going to any other Mass because it may, these words that are being used is may.
No, not may,
and,
not may.
Well, but the point is, nobody's been able to show me, whether Father Peak or Father Scara or whoever, that he is doing something wrong. He is saying something that is, quote, against the faith. And the way I was brought up, it's a mortal sin to miss Mass on Sunday. The precept of the church, the number one, so therefore it must be the most important. The first precept of the church is to attend Mass on Sunday.
No. The first precept of the church, that's the third commandment, right? So the first precept is, I'm Lord thy God, that set up strange gods before me. Right?
No, not the commandments.
No, but the precept of the church. Right. The precepts are just positive commands. One of them is,
go to church, go to Mass on Sunday.
Right? Follow the laws of the church concerning marriage. I can't follow the laws of the church concerning marriage, right? So, the precepts are not all the precepts that we receive communion once a year. We can receive communion more than once a year, right? Well, so, no, we see the 6 precepts are just positive precepts. The first law of the Catholic is, of course, I am Lord thy God, thou shalt not have strange gods before me. That's the first law of the Catholic. Okay, now, you see, like we say with regard to the mainstream society thing, we recommend you don't go to their masses. The reason is not because the particular priest doesn't believe the faith. Only God knows what he really believes anyway. That's not our concern. We hope that he believes the faith. The reason is that the official position of the society, the organization that he belongs to, is officially that the new Mass is newly promulgated, which as Catholics we can't accept. And it is officially the Vatican II is tainted with errors, which means basically we don't like Vatican.
But that isn't the Mass that we're going to.
No. It's the doctrine of the people of that Mass.
We're going to Mass.
But remember, Martin Luther invented a new Mass eventually, but in the beginning, Martin Luther said the Latin Trinity. Yes. And with regard to the Orthodox Schismatics, they never changed their Mass, right? They still say the traditional Mass after 1,000 years of being outside the church. So you can't go to the Orthodox Mass because even though it's a true Mass and Christ is really present and they're real priests, they're not united to the church. Right. And they have another doctrine, most of them, right? Well, they all at least reject the papacy, which is heresy. And some of them reject Immaculate Conception, not all of them do. It gets complicated, but they all reject the authority of the Pope, right? Which is a heresy, not just a mistake, but a heresy. But yeah.
So I watched a conference from Bishop Williamson. He's been promoting the first 5 Saturdays.
Yes.
And without catacomb situation, is it possible for us to do that devotion?
Okay. Well, in fact, didn't Sister say you can do it? Sister Lucy said you can do it by spiritual communion if you have to. Is that right? But strictly speaking, it's difficult. We have, it's not really, and again, obviously that's not an obligation, obviously. You're not obliged to do the first 5 Saturdays. And therefore, if we can make the Masses available, yes, but we can't usually do that. We do it like in some of our places, but most of them we can't. So if it's not possible, it's not possible, right? So I wouldn't worry about it, and again, also remember, like we tell everybody, while I say, and many of us priests say, you should not go to the mainstream society Masses because of the official position of the society has changed. At the same time, you don't just listen to Father Pfeiffer, right? You don't do that. You need to understand that. You see what I mean? And if you don't understand that, well, then you just do the best you can. You see what I mean? You don't understand yet, John, right?
Well,
that's fine.
I don't think it's a matter of understanding. I think it's a matter of how do you justify I'm going, when I was a kid from 100 years ago,
Right.
you miss Mass on Sunday, it's a mortal sin. Period. End of story.
That's not
So-
true.
But no, I understand.
and some people say it's not
You guys already had this conversation 50 times, so you can have it another 50 times after.
Right.
Right? Okay. But the thing is that, no, I understand that, John, but you're just thinking when you're a little kid, mommy told you that, and the sister
No, the
told you
priest
that.
told
and
me.
so
It
on.
wasn't
The priest
mommy.
told you that. No, but that counts, right?
Sisters of Catechism Saturday
Right.
morning
So-
and the priest.
But the thing is that it's a positive command. And the thing about positive commands is, of course, there's exceptions to them, right? Like when you can't go to Mass on Sunday,
Right.
either physically or morally, right? Okay?
Right.
So, and we're just saying that we're in a situation now where there's a moral impediment. That is, that unfortunately, the priest, not him personally, but his organization is holding a doctrine different than that.
Okay, so do I have the not the ability, but do I have the authority to make that
Yes, you
moral
do.
decision on myself?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Sir,
I don't agree.
you know, the other problem with them is that because of the mindset change that's going through the society and all the priests, it's what they're not saying. It's not just going to Mass and what you hear
Right.
them say, it's what they're not saying.
But actually, that's true. But also, John, a good point is that this is part of the error of modernism. It's one of the very subtle parts of modernism. And what the Masons have done in the church the last 200 years. And that is, I must follow the authority. And even if I don't follow the authority, it's because I'm following another authority who told me not to follow that authority. You see what I mean? And this is wrong. Because St. Paul said, if an angel from heaven, we ourselves, St. Paul himself, of course, or an angel from heaven teach you something different than what we have already taught you, let them be anathema.
Okay.
Which doesn't mean they're not authorities anymore. It just means, forget it, right?
Okay.
So, but what does that presuppose? It presupposes that you can remember what I taught you yesterday, and you can apply it without the necessity of obedience. See what I mean? So you do have the authority, quote unquote, to say, I'm sorry, but I was taught there were 10 commandments. You just said that there's 9. Sorry, Father, I can't accept that, right? See what I mean?
Well, but see, none of them are saying there's 9.
What they are saying is this. Wait, we've already said what they've said about 1,000 times at least, right? And that is, they are saying that the new Mass is legitimately promulgated, which means what it means.
Right.
Period. And that's wrong.
But I think
They are saying that the new church is going in the wrong direction and losing the faith, which is false. The new church already went in the wrong direction a long time ago, and it lost the faith. See what I mean?
Not arguing that.
Those are false statements. So for that reason, we have to say, sorry, we can't go along with it. See what I mean?
Well, I guess in terms of your authority as a priest and the authority of a bishop, whether it's Bishop Tisseré, whether it's Bishop Williamson, or whether it's Bishop or Provanus or whatever,
Right.
Any of them, I don't know, I've made phone calls to a pile of them, and
Right.
none of them are supporting this idea of not going to Mass because a priest is saying don't go to that Mass.
No, I'm including myself. I don't support that idea.
No, I'm not bringing up your name in any. I'm not.
No, but the thing is, but you can now, right? I don't support you not going to Mass.
I know we disagree.
I understand. It's no problem. Just so you can have your list. Now the thing is but the fact is that we shouldn't go to that Mass because of where they stand, and that's what St. John the Almsgiver says, right? Do not take communion with the heretics and the schismatics because they're not holding the true faith. St. Athanasius, what did he say? Don't go to that Arian church. Remember, the Arian church was the Catholic church, very similar to today, right? They were Catholic bishops that were Arians. They were Catholic priests that were Arians, and they were in the Catholic church. And St. Athanasius, remember, they have the churches, we have the faith. Well, he also said, we have the faith, don't go to that church. See what I mean? So, and so, I mean, it shouldn't be easy for us to make that decision. It shouldn't be easy. That's why you don't jump into it. you want to understand that it's the right thing to do, and then you give yourself a little time to do it. You know what I mean? You haven't reached that point yet. So I understand that. I'm not a problem, right? Right? You know what I mean? I understand that it's hard for you. I understand you don't see that yet because you're stuck on the got to go to mass on Sunday and it's a Latin mass. He's not a Protestant, so what's the problem? Basically, right? Of course, I don't agree with everything he says. Don't agree with everything he does, but it's the mass, right? But remember, as Catholics, we say no. That's I understand that thinking, but it's not correct. That the correct thinking is it's the faith, and even if they have the mass, but if they have the mass without the clear faith, then I'm sorry, I can't go to that. See what I mean? And that's the choice that our ancestors have made for 2,000 years. You have to admit that. It's a choice our ancestors have made, like whether it be those Pax priests takes in Hungary in the 1950s, or whether it be in the East that had to deal with it all the time, because the Catholics would change. The Catholic priest would be a Catholic priest on one Sunday, then they go become Orthodox the next Sunday, they go become Catholic again the Sunday after that. Then they say, well, what is he this week? And so they said, look, if they're not with the Pope and they're not in the true church, then you just can't go, right?
That's what I mean. Your examples don't apply to. Okay, so whether you're saying the Aryan thing, or whether you're saying the thing from over Hungary that you just brought up, the point is that the priest at the other traditional Latin mass around the world, around the United States anyway, none of them are bi-ritual. None of them are a Novus Ordo priest that are doing like the woman in New York with Bishop Williamson, where during the week she's going to the Novus Ordo Mass, Sunday she goes to the Latin Mass,
right.
And then we find out after the fact it's the same. Then later on we find out it's the same priest doing both masses.
They're not heretics as such, because heretic means you're guilty of the sin. Yeah. They're making a mistake.
Material, though.
Yeah, material means you're not heretic. It's like being a material murderer. There's really no such thing, right?
They're ignorantly against the faith.
They are, but it's not intentional. That's why we don't condemn them, see, right? We say you shouldn't do that,
but we still
shouldn't
go to them
right?
because of that as a result, right?
Say that again?
We still shouldn't go to them for the sacraments or for the Mass
that's
as
correct.
A result. Yes.
That is correct.
Because
but again, you got to be patient because you understand that not everybody sees that. You see what I mean? Not everybody sees that, and it takes a grace to see that. And we're let the grace, we tell people you shouldn't go, but they have to get the grace, Many of our people go to the Resistance Mass right now, but still go to the New Mass. Right? And I tell them, don't do that, right? Just like I tell you, but at the same time, you gotta understand the New Mass isn't good, right? And then some of them go to the Indo, some of them go to the City Contest, some of them go to the mainstream society, and some say, I'm sorry, but I just have to stay just with the priests. And also it's not, one of the arguments is since the 1970s, you're the only priest like that. The isolation argument, right? The argument ad populum, whatever, not hominum argument. You're the only one. Well, Jesus Christ was the only one who was faithful on Good Friday, and the Blessed Virgin Mary, of course, right? But that only one argument doesn't work, you see. And also it's not really true, because I'm not the only one. There are many of us. You, like say 15 priests or whatever it is. But still, I'm not the only one, right? And so it's not true to say I'm the only one. That's not correct. And besides, it's irrelevant anyway, because what matters is what's true and not who's true. You know what I mean? It's what's right, not who's right. You see what I mean? And,
Father?
Yes.
My husband met with both of our priests in Denver, and he asked them direct questions. What do you believe about the Second Vatican Council? What do you believe about the New Mass? And because of he understanding the position of the priest, even though they weren't saying it at the sermon, he realized that I cannot trust you because I don't believe with where you're standing on the issue. So even though the priests from afar looked fine, meeting with them one-on-one really did help us understand what their position was on all of the different issues. So that's something you might try and do, is sit down with the priest and ask them those direct questions.
It's true that, like you're saying there, to speak to the priests individually, not all the priests end up that it turns out they're not as traditional as you think they are, they're not as conservative as you think you are. It's true, that's an issue. But again, that's very shaky because, it's a good point, but, human beings, I can be a heretic today and a Catholic tomorrow and, weak the next day and strong the next day. We're weak, fickle human beings. And so even if a guy was wrong yesterday, maybe he repented today, you know. So even though we have to be careful about, you know, okay, this priest is not a good example, or this priest is not teaching I don't mean like a good example, not behaving properly, but I mean, he's not teaching properly, not right, not acting, not teaching the faith properly, I have to stay away from him. Well, that's true. If he's really teaching error, you've got to stay away from him. But we're dealing with priests who are carefully avoiding both the truth and the error. So that they're talking about the weather, and they're talking about things which any conservative atheist or conservative Protestant or conservative Catholic would agree with. And they're not saying things that are specifically Catholic. This is one of the points in Ottaviani's intervention, that even the parts of that new Mass that are not heretical, they're not specifically Catholic. And so a Protestant can be happy with it.
Right.
And this is what we're having now with the new teaching. I mean, our faithful are complaining about it throughout the entire world, that the priests are not saying the things they used to say. They're not condemning the things they used to condemn. These are
Well, they don't condemn
subjective
anything.
arguments, but they're still legitimate. And they're signs of the problem that I'm talking about. If what we're saying is true, that they changed the doctrine officially, we're going to see signs of that in the parishes.
And what they don't say.
In what they don't say and in what they do say.
From what I've been researching, I understand that. Are there, how many heresies? Are there over 200 heresies in Vatican II?
Oh, I don't know. In fact, since it's a synthesis of all heresies, I mean, you know, there's not any missing. You know? I know, I've heard the numbers 200, I've heard 24.
So
you know, I couldn't tell you all 200 of them, but
Bishop Boulay says we, meaning the society accepts 95%. How much heresy does we, the whole society as a whole, accept?
well, remember with Bishop Flay's statement back in 2001, which he actually repeated multiple times since then, we accept 95% of the council as perfectly okay. The other 5% as questionable. Not wrong. Okay? 95% we have no problem with whatsoever. 5% there might be a problem. See that?
Well, over 200.
We're assuming 5% heresy, 95% good. No, 95%, no question. Everything is wonderful, just like before Vatican II. And 5%, But in fact, the text of the council, Father Calderon, Bishop was telling me this a few years ago, Father Calderon said you cannot, he's a priest in South America, in a seminary in Argentina, you cannot understand the modernist council without a modernist mind. And it was written with a modernist mind, it was written with modernist language to have a modernist meaning. And to give it something else is not being honest and just. Okay?
Well, that's the problem with the people that I know, relatives, where they're telling me that they accept, because they still attend a society, they are now repeating that very same thing, saying, well, there's nothing wrong with the council. Bishop Lee, the society accepts 95% of the council. That means 95% is okay. And they're repeating what Bishop Boulay is.
That's right, and that's normal. What you point out there is the danger aspect. That's, again, probably from the moral perspective. And from the moral perspective, which is what Father Roll's primary perspective is, you can see it's very, even from this moral perspective, it was legitimate for him to do what he did. But I would say that it was almost like a personal legitimate thing, whereas our argument is that it's more than a personal legitimate thing. It's deeper than that. It's not a case of just priests who are going mad headlong into Rome when they shouldn't be, modernist Rome when they shouldn't be, but it's a deeper problem, which is that the priests and that the official position of the society has accepted essentially modernist Rome. You see what I mean? And I can point to the documents, right? I mean, I understand that it's hard to accept it because the consequences are challenging, right? And we shouldn't lightly accept that. Shouldn't lightly accept it, right? But, yeah.
But John, I understand everybody's position is a little bit different, and I applaud you for bringing your statements. I really do.
Yeah, it's good.
For my own family, it was really difficult as the head of the family to say, we're not going to go to Mass on Sunday. It was extremely difficult. I was raised that you go every Sunday. I understand that. I think the words that probably carried the most weight weren't Father's, but it came from Archbishop Pfeiffer when he talked about after the changes in the council and how although the sacraments were probably still valid and those priests were still saying valid masses, but he explained the dangers of just surrounding yourself in that environment. Your position with yourself is different than me and my family. If I bring my kids to that environment, I can probably keep the faith. Will my kids have that same opportunity? We had to weigh out the danger versus benefit. And it was tough. It really was.
Right. So, and that's true. Again, that's right. And I'd say that again, I know that it's true that that's a bit of the, the moral argument, that it is the example, the great example given by Archbishop Lefebvre was England. He said that in England, in the north, for instance, far away from London, many of the priests didn't say they weren't Catholic. They still pretended like they were Catholic, and they still said a traditional Mass. But after 50, 100 years, 100% of those people that didn't fight lost the faith. And you see, and so at what point do you raise your hand and fight? Well, it's true that that's the grave danger. That's the danger aspect. So you could say, I would say, follow the father-in-law, even though he does not bring up directly the doctrine in the same way that I wish that he would, he does still argue very well that, look, this is a danger to my faith and the danger to the faith of my sheep. And he's right. And even from the argument of danger, it's a sufficient reason to say, I'm sorry, but I can't go along with this anymore. It's just that it's not, it doesn't seal the fight. You see what I mean? It doesn't. It's like we're talking about Mass on Sunday. We could argue for 1,000 years because there are exceptions. We'll know this is not an exception. We'll know that is an exception. And then we could write 50,000 pages of why this is an exception and 50,000 pages of why it's not an exception. And we could have a big debate. And see, you could go on forever. You see what I mean? When you argue from the moral perspective. That's why we got to step back. That's why in the end it's safer to step back and say, look, forget the moral perspective. When you say a different faith, all bets are off. Bang. You see? But yes.
Yeah. About having to go to Mass on Sunday. Yes, the third commandment is that you keep Sunday holy. But Father has spoke on this, and he has a licentiate in canon law. He said that the church cannot force you to do something that it does not provide for you. So if the church is not providing a Catholic priest that has the faith to give you the sacraments, then you are not obligated to go every single Sunday. You keep your Sunday holy, you say your rosary, and you go and you read from your missal. Read the gospel and the epistle.
I've heard all that. The point is, I just don't believe that I have the authority to make a decision that priest doesn't have the faith, even though he's doing what he's paid to do and he's doing what he was taught to do, and I don't see anything that he's doing that's wrong.
I've got to speak.
So,
anyway. No. You're trying to make it short on me.
I was raised in the same era as this man.
Yeah.
And we were
That's
told
the
we
problem.
had to go to church. Okay.
I tried.
So I was forced to do that Novus Ordo for 30 years.
Right. Yeah.
And when the Archbishop said that you will lose your faith, she and I, a little bit here, a little bit there, we started accepting this and we started accepting that and we started accepting this through those years.
That's right.
And then when we got to the SSPX, they started reminding me of the religion that I was taught when I was young, and we said, hey, this stuff is all wrong.
Right.
So the bishop is right, Archbishop is right. If you go to that mass, if you go to a mass that these people aren't in the same sync as the Catholic faith, you're going to lose your faith.
Right, and that's the same thing that
We
the
came
Tweener
close.
was saying, right?
We came close.
You're bringing up the same essential point, right? And that it's true that you when you surround yourself, you endanger that faith. And what happens? You put yourself in danger. Those who live in danger shall perish in it, right? Those who love danger shall perish in it. And that's true. That's true. For me,
if you play with the pigs, you're going to be a pig.
Right, yeah.
You know, that's fine and good, but Father made the point, the essential part of it is grace.
Right.
None of us would be here. None of us would have left I would not have left the society. It's a grace.
Right.
And you get it when you get it.
That's right. Say, for instance, God gave you that grace after 30 years.
You need to ask for it. You need to pray to the Holy Ghost and ask to be the truth.
Yeah.
You need to ask and pray for it, and God will give you the grace when it's your time.
Right.
It took us a year or two to finally leave the society because I could not leave the Mass. I went to daily Mass and went to benediction. I hate not being able to see a high Mass or see benediction anymore. But that's not the point. And so we could go on giving you all these different things, but it's a grace and you just need to pray for it.
Right.
And when God sees it.
And also remember, that's right. And there are many, many souls throughout the whole world that are just, remember, we're in a time of great confusion. And our Lord said, they will deceive, if possible, even the elect. So we know that and I think you're right. It's a very good point. We've got to have grace. Because one of the dangers is that we can get angry on the inside. Get really angry, because we see the truth and we're suffering because of it. And other people seem like they're not suffering. You need to suffer too. I'm trying to help you. Right? And so, but so it's a temptation to do that. And that's when we got to remember the supernatural perspective. That you're right. It is a special grace. Even though it's obvious when you look at it on a piece of paper that, new Mass still promulgated equals false. That's true that that's objectively obvious. But yet, because of our situation, because of our weaknesses, because of our own problems, it's not obvious to each one of us, right?
I'm not saying you don't read.
Right.
I mean, you need to continue to read and listen to sermons.
Right.
But, so you need to do both, but it's a grace.
That's right.
Because there's no way he and I deserve to be here.
Yeah, that's
there's
right.
nothing we've done to be here.
Yeah, that is correct.
But I didn't get the graces to come to the SSPX because of the new Mass. I'll tell you that.
Right, that's right.
The graces I got was in 1949 when I was confirmed.
Right.
The priest said, you can rely on those graces the rest of your life.
Right, that's right. That is correct. They sit inside of you. They really do.
And I didn't get the graces to come to SSPX because of the Mass. I came because I was confirmed.
That's right.
Properly.
That's right. That's right. And those are true examples of, the supernatural grace. And we're in a great fight for the faith. And we are dealing with, confusion on all sides. And we are being persecuted. We're being attacked on all sides because, and very similar to what happened in the 70s. Our whole families, or many of us, our families are rejecting us and so on and so forth. Kind of the same experience that happened in the 70s or when someone first comes to tradition, that just their own families reject them and they end up having to suffer a little bit for the faith. But those are all, they're really blessings in the big picture of things. And, like I say, our obligation is to keep preaching the truth, and let it be discovered. Father was just reading, what was the name of the Dominican, that sermon we were reading? You read it to me the other day, and we hadn't read it in the van yesterday.
Hermas of the Romans.
When was that?
His name was Hermas.
When did he write?
1200s.
So the very beginning of the Dominicans is Father Hermas, was writing about preaching. Very beautiful about preaching. The Dominicans are the order of preachers. And he says a preacher is many things, right? One of them is he's a hunter. Preacher is a hunter, right? And when he's preaching, he's actually hunting for souls, right? He's hunting for souls. And he's a singer. All the things he said, he's a singer, right? Because he lifts how do you say it? He mentioned all the things that a preacher is.
To the delights of heaven.
Raise the hearts to the delights of heaven. And then he's, of course, St. Bernard says he's a dog,
He's a drunkard.
Oh, he's a drunkard. Don't forget that one. Right? So the preacher's a drunkard. What was a drunkard?
He gets people drunk on the true wine.
Right, that's right. I'd say right. So
He himself must be one.
right, yes. And so that and then what were the other things you mentioned? So many things.
The whole list. He's a soldier. He's a
Soldier. But again,
businessman.
they mentioned all the things that help the purpose of preaching, and that's also why the devil hates true preaching. Right? He hates it because it hunts souls. It defends the army of Christ. It barks like the dog, against the heresies. It watches protects the citadel of the church. And that's the reason why, for instance, in the gospel, they created the 7 deacons. He says we need the 7 deacons to wait at the table so we can do our principal work of preaching, at the apostles. And so, and that's why it's so important for us to continue preaching the truth. And also, like Bishop Sheen says, we can't pretend like we don't have it. One of the really good points Bishop Sheen makes, when you have the truth, don't act like you don't have it. You can be nice to people that don't have it. You can be understanding to people that don't have it. You can gently give the truth to people that don't have it. But you can never say, well, this is your opinion, that Jesus is not God. I feel he is. Right? So you can never ever present the truth as if it's an opinion. And therefore, this is one reason why they say that, myself and Father Hugo and the rest of us priests, like Cardozo and so on, that we're offensive. We're not judgmental. I don't go around condemning the other people, the other individuals. But they say we're judgmental anyway. Why? Because we do say there's only one truth, and you must accept that truth. It takes the grace of God to accept it, but you still must accept it. And we wait patiently for the grace to fall, because it's a supernatural battle. It's a supernatural battle. So it's not for me to pour grace in you. I must be a channel of grace, but it's not for me to pour the grace in you. God has to pour the grace in you. My duty is to preach the truth. And the truth is, in our present battle, it must be said, New Mass equals straight from hell. Vatican II equals straight from hell. And these things must be rejected. And unfortunately, because the society changed its position officially, we must say that we recommend that you don't go to the mainstream masses. Because number one, they change their position, which is an error of faith. And number two, they're sliding because of it, which is leading to the loss of faith in practical day-to-day society life. And it's happening. The conservative priests, strong priests are becoming weak priests. The strong faithful are becoming weak faithful. The weak faithful are leaving the faith. These are the things that we're seeing, right? Which are some consequences. And yet, at the same time, we don't condemn the individuals. We do have to warn against these things. Right? We have to do that.
I would imagine there are more than a few priests still in the society that do not hold the error that the whole society has pretty much
accepted, or officially accepted anyway. Yeah.
And so, but they don't speak out against it.
That's true.
And that and when they do, they get silenced like Father Roth.
That's right.
And
so I guess you're trying to say, so therefore, even the ones that are good, they're not doing the good that matches what's in their hearts, so to speak. In other words, even though,
and it's kind of like the conciliar church telling SSPX parishioners, as long as you don't adhere to the schism,
right,
then you're still okay.
Right.
But
right. For instance, the priest of Trinity St. Peter, for instance, who really hate the new Mass. I've met a couple of them.
Uh-huh.
In fact, one of them told me, my name is Father whoever, and I can't remember his name, I hate the new Mass. You think I don't, but I do. Right? I can't remember his name, but that was the first sentence that he said. And then we had a long discussion about it. And he did have to admit that he couldn't say that it was evil. He had to admit that. He didn't like it, but he couldn't say it was evil, right? And you see the problem, Father? You see? So that means if you're commanded to say it, do you have the right to say no? One priest of Trinity I talked to about that, he just started weeping. That was his answer. Do you have the right to say no? He just started weeping. Another priest of Trinity St. Peter told me, I could never say that in New Mass if I was commanded to. And so Archbishop Lefebvre was commanded to say it in 1975. Did he have the right to disobey? Only you have the right? He didn't. He said, well, I guess you're right. Mm-hmm. You know? So, you see, but you see that it's, I think what you're trying to say is, yeah, there are priests, I'm sure there's priests that don't like the new doctrine, don't like the new direction, don't agree with it, but unfortunately they can't talk about it, except privately, you know, like in the sacristy or in the back, but then they can't talk about it as priests, right? Mm-hmm. You see, and unfortunately as priests, it's our duty to talk about it as priests,
Right. And it's like well, we have wolves in the society now, but we're not allowed to pull sheepskin off their heads.
No, that's true. We have wolves in the society, not allowed to pull sheepskin off their head. That's true, and that's another problem, and we have to do that. It's one of our obligations. You know, and that's not we're not just pulling wolves, but you're right, we have to pull the sheepskin off their heads and expose this man as a wolf in sheep's clothing, just like our Lord said we have to do. That's why we do have to, unfortunately, name some names. We don't name every name, we're going to name some names. Yes.
Like one of the saying of Sazel, he said the duty is priest is a shepherd, so they got to bark.
Right, that's right. So that's right. And that's like he said, that barking is, like Roger says, that barking is pulling the sheepskin off of the head of the wolf. You're right. Right. So, we know that when you're after the battle is over, there's going to be all kinds of experts. Robert E. Lee shouldn't have charged. He shouldn't have done this. And what's his name? The guy that showed up late in the Battle of Gettysburg. Who's the guy that showed up late?
Grant.
What?
Grant?
No. Ewell. What's his name? Ewell. He showed up late. Ewell showed up late. Well, if he was on time, when the war is over, there's a million experts, right? On what they should have done and what they shouldn't have done. But when you're in the war and there's smoke all around you, it's not as easy, right? It's not as easy, right? And so we're right now in the war. Now, the doctrine is clear, and what we're teaching is right. It doesn't matter that I'm teaching it. It's still right. Doesn't matter if an idiot's teaching it or a fool's teaching it. It's still right. And so I can't say that it's not right. And I can't have a false humility. Well, it's just my opinion, and I can't really say that it's necessarily true, because I can say that it's necessarily true. I'm standing, like St. Bernard said, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. Archbishop Lefebvre was a giant, and I'm standing on his shoulders. I'm not standing on somebody else's shoulders. I'm standing on Archbishop Lefebvre's shoulders. And he was a giant, but he was not that big of a giant, because he was standing on St. Bernard's shoulders. He was standing on, the apostles' shoulders. He was standing on the shoulders of a lot of saints. So that's a real solid foundation that I'm standing on. And so when I stand on the shoulder of Archbishop Lefebvre and say what he said, who stood on the shoulders of St. Pius X, who stood on the shoulders of St. Pius V, all the way back. That's the solid shoulders to stand on. And that's why St. Bernard says beautifully in his letter 77, that I see far, because I stand on the shoulders of giants. And he mentioned St. Augustine and St. Ambrose. He mentioned that letter. And so you can't see because you're very short. He says Zacchaeus was very short. His eyesight wasn't very good when he climbed into a tree. And therefore our Lord said, come down, Zacchaeus, and he stayed in his house. So we stand high because we stand on the shoulders of giants. And we stand firmly on the ground, even though we're high, because we're standing on the shoulders of giants that don't get knocked over. And so, therefore we can say, and we must say, the truth with boldness. It's the right way to say it. And with charity, but with boldness. With boldness. And of course we understand that not everybody's going to accept it. And of course we understand that we're not living up to the gospel as we should. I have to preach the gospel as it needs to be preached, yet I know that I am weak in the practicing of the gospel. But I still have to preach it as strongly, and then do my best in my weak life to try to get as close as I can to matching it. But it's not for me to take this pure gospel and mix it with my weaknesses. It's for me to take my weaknesses in the private life and try to make it like the pure gospel. But I can't play games with the pure gospel when we're preaching it. And this is our case here. We got to be preaching the gospel now, because the priest that's needed right now is a priest of now. If God wanted St. Pius X to be a priest right now, guess what? He'd be right now walking around on the earth. God made St. Pius X to do his work before 1914. And he wants saints of our age. And I must be one of the saints of our age. Unfortunately, not. But it doesn't change the obligation, does it? Right? And I have to strive to be one of the saints of our age. And I've got to do the work of the priest of our age. And I can't claim the excuse of, well, you know, I just didn't get the strength and I didn't get the grace and blah, blah, blah. We can't argue that. So,
I think it's important to know that with the modernism of today is that the definition of truth has been changed drastically to, instead of being the conformity of the mind to reality, which is what it is, they've changed it to the conformity of the world to our ignorance.
That's right. That's exactly correct. You know? And
so I think we make it about things that are subjective. We try to stand on things that are subjective, like putting our opinions about, we don't like Father Pfeiffer, he's too fat. These are things that we can't, that don't matter.
Right.
It's about the faith.
Right.
It's about what's going
on.
on.
It's true. And we want to conform the reality to our ignorance is absolutely correct. And that's also one of the powers of the modern world is, you know, people, because they got their own cell phone, they got their own blog, they got their own everything, that I could be an expert on any subject, because if you talk to someone in the flesh, you can't use complete words, but by cut and paste and copy and paste and by, you know,
it is dangerous that there is 100 different opinions, because then you're like, which one's right?
Right.
So it does cause confusion. I agree.
Yeah, and that's why, again, like the line was saying, you know, it's the grace. We can't get around that it takes grace.
Yeah.
You know, it's good. We'll have to close here in a minute, but you know, because it is an important battle, our battle of the faith, and you know, and it's good to see that there's more priests slowly coming into the picture. There's more faithful coming slowly into the picture. And yet, of course, unfortunately, there is still some confusion amongst them. And we've got to expect that. And our Lord explained that quite well as well. He said, when the shepherd is smitten, the sheep are going to scatter. And I have prayed for you, Peter, that when you be converted, strengthen the brethren. So we're just waiting for that. But we don't wait with a kind of false quietism, which is, there's nothing I can do, so I'll just wait for better time. I'm not the Pope. I can't consecrate Russia, so don't bother me. That, of course, is very wrong. But we don't want that. We have to fight for the truth. We have to pray for the Pope to obey Russia, to obey, heaven. But we have to and yet recognize that it's going to be for heaven to make that change. I mean, make the Pope obey Russia. I mean, obey Our Lady and consecrate Russia, etc. And that until then, the sheep are going to scatter. But I don't want to help them scatter. I want to pull as many together as possible. And we have to try to do that. And God will allow some success. He won't allow a total failure, right? He'll allow some pulling together. He'll allow some souls to come together. And they are throughout the world. You know, I mean, it's we've got casualties in the battle, but they are coming together throughout the world. And like this little bitty meeting here is an example, right? Right? You know, and weekend of the Sacred Heart, weekend of War Nations down in Winona and so on, somehow happen to be that way. And then, we'll get the victory there. So, in any case, we're going to close with that. But, what do the Minnesotans think about the, yeah?
Father, does everyone know Mass at 5:30?
Oh, right, I didn't mention. I'm going to say Mass at, well, first we'll have Rosary, so Father's going to give another conference at 4:45 on that. Right. Okay, so Father's going to give another conference here. In a little while, he'll break. I'm going to say Mass. I think a few people didn't make it to Mass. I think a few didn't anyway. So I'm going to say Mass down there at 5:30. And then also, we'd have the Rosary up here at the same time. I think that's 5:30. 5:30 is our normal time for the Rosary. Yeah.
I got one quick question.
Yeah.
In this stage of the battle, is it apostolic for you society priests, like this priest that just wrote this letter, and some of the others that I know of,
who just now, I'm going to find a group of faithful. I'm going to be their priest. I'm not going to do what Archbishop Lefebvre set up as part of your.
It's part of our statutes, kind of, yes.
Your statute.
Yeah.
You're a society priest. I'm not a society faithful.
Right.
You know, I'm not obligated to the statutes that you are. I'm a Roman Catholic, which you are too, but you belong to
that
a
organization.
fraternity order.
Yes.
Now, are we in the battle now where it's okay for these priests, like if this priest here decides to, I'm just going to take my flock and I'm doing nothing more. I'm not going to get on the plane and fly around and do what you're doing.
Well,
because
I argue the same as like what Father Hugo says, is that Father Hugo.
To me, it's not apostolic.
That's
but
right.
Is it at this stage of the game?
I would say no. My argument is like Father Hugo, that if you're a society priest, you need to do what society priests do. You know, I wanted to be a priest, but I did not want to be a traveling priest. I did not want to be a roaming apostolic priest. I wanted to be in the same parish all my life until I died. In fact, I even thought it was going to happen at one point, because when I walked into the Denver parish, it was my first parish, even though we're traveling, I traveled to Denver. And I said, Lord, let me be here for at least 10 years. And I had this feeling that it would really happen. And it did. I was there 11 years. Right? Feeling. It was a feeling. It was nothing more than a feeling. Okay, yeah. And so, right. Okay.
Feeling should not be your indicator.
No, but let me finish. But I really wanted to stay. I wanted to be there all my life, right? In Denver, Colorado, right? You know, and Denver and Fort Collins, right? And that was my desire. And I didn't want to be going all over the place. I wanted to work on converting the people of Denver and Fort Collins, and et cetera. And that was it. Didn't work out like that. But I did stay there for 11 years. And, And I knew also I'd have to travel. I didn't like the idea of traveling. And, but that's what I'm a society priest. So of course I got transferred, and then I got sent over to Asia, and, you know, et cetera. And now I see clearly the hand of divine providence, you know, post facto, you know, after the fact. Very clear that it was divine providence that arranged things that way, right? You know, and so, but I figure I'm a society priest. I believe I still have an obligation to be a society priest, which means on the road, responding to the call of faithful, right? Not settling down. Like, I do believe that when Father Bolduc contacted me, it was actually a temptation. When Father Bolduc came to me and said, take over my parish of 500 people. There's 4 parishes. You can take them over, just give them Mass every week. I said, well, Father, I'd like to help take over your parishes, but other people are calling me. We're in a crisis right now of a global nature. I can't just take care of your parishes. It's right before you died, you know, in 2012. And I said, I can't just take over your parishes. I'll try to come and help. I think God will send me someone to be able to take over your parishes. I believe He will, but I can't guarantee it. But I do believe He will. And they said, well, I need someone to take over the parish, right? So it didn't happen, right? Nothing happened. Then he died. And the society took over the parish. So I believe it was actually a temptation. There's your stable parish. You've got 500 people. You've got everything you need. You don't need to go, all around the world, etc. I do believe it was a temptation, you know. And I said, well, you know, I can't do that, you know. Now, I believe, like Father Hugo says, is that if you're a society priest, you've got to continue to be a society priest. Unless, of course, there's a health problem, either physical or mental, or, you know, a combination of health problems. Say, I'm sorry, but I can't physically do that. Okay, no problem. No one is obliged to the impossible, right? If it's truly impossible for you to continue to do what you did before, then fine. But the reason why we do the missions is because the Superior told us to. Now he's not telling me to? Well, guess what? Not doing the missions anymore. So that's really not ideal. And I do think this is part of it. But I think the reason why there's a temptation to be this way, the elephant in the living room. So Bishop Williamson elephant, right? Bishop Williamson says, stay by yourself. Be an isolated group. Quote unquote, independent pockets of resistance. Take care of the people that take care of you. And teach them the truth and help them, and be moderate and quiet and prudent, and don't make a lot of noise, and don't overstretch yourself, right? So they're following the example of the moral authority. It doesn't have any real authority, but the moral authority, right? And so, yeah, I think it isn't ideal. But again, it took great strength to do this, you know? And and then we'll try to help them in the way that we can. And then also say, well, you know, maybe you should consider, I mean, can you help our little flock in Quebec? You know, a priest has got the faith, you can speak French, maybe you can come over and help them. You know, even if it's not every day, every week, at least a couple times a year. That would be a great help to us. If you can't go everywhere all the time, all right, but there should be some going around. I think you're right. Also, the other problem, another parishioner pointed out, he's going to these faithful who don't have Mass every week. But that's not our issue. It's not faithful have Mass every week, but the faithful have the faith, right? And of course, a lot of people like yourself would notice little things like that and you know, kind of offended by it. But I think he's not, you know, he's not seeing the whole picture yet. Again, it's a grace issue, right? You know, because here we are, more priests joining the resistance, but over here by themselves, over there by themselves, and some of them are in danger of losing their priesthood because most of us are not meant to be alone. There's a few neurotic individuals who live by themselves, you know, but the most of us are not meant for that, right? And of course the devil's very wise. He knows. You're living by yourself, and you're under the pressure, under the control of certain faithful, and you start having emotional problems, mental breaks down, leave the priesthood, crack. The devil's wise, right? Yeah.
So the 100 plus priests of which he's a part of,
yes.
Where have most of them gone? Because it seems like
to their own place.
You know, there's a lot of talk about them, but then there's never any mention of specifically who they are and where did they go, other than
most of their names. I used to have at least 70 names on my tongue. Most of them have just gone to their own places. Some of them are not saying Mass for anybody. Father Leviatus was ordained with me. He's just saying Mass by himself privately and being a hermit. Who's that? Father Leviatus. He's strong against modernism. He's 100% in right direction, but he's being a hermit. He thinks that's what which has got health problems too. It's not 100%. Okay, right. But at the same time, he's being a hermit. Then there's other priests that are just taking care of one little flock here. Others are staying with their parents. Others we don't know where they are. Right?
You hearing anything about Father Dorn?
He's don't know where they are category.
Right.
Officially, anyway.
That's what Bishop Williamson said.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows. Well, yeah.
Right. That's why I say officially.
Right.
Yeah. But the thing is that so and then they're operating quietly and many of them they join the resistance at the moment they're transferred. That's not 100% ideal, right? Because it could be interpreted as I don't like the transfer, therefore I'm got saved, found Jesus, right? And so it could be interpreted that way. I'm sure it's mixed. I'm sure it's not pure, but it's still, what was the element that was they were standing with the society, with the society, with the society, with the society. They were transferred now with the resistance, right? And then another one with the society, with the society. They were transferred and now they're with the resistance, right? So it does bring up doubt for some of them, right? But again, we're mixed creatures, Usually we don't do things for one pure reason. We're mixed,
I know recently the society made the point that they're back up to 600 with the recent ordinations.
Right.
And when you look at the chart that they even had in the Angelus, they showed from the beginning of the society this sort of logarithmic curve,
right.
And then all of a sudden they just quit putting the numbers down here. So there's like 5 years that aren't showing.
That's right.
And because there wasn't any growth, that's when they were all leaving. And they didn't talk about it. They didn't, they just chopped off the curve.
Yeah, it was over 600.
Yeah.
5 years ago.
Right.
What?
Yeah. You said they had 600 ordinations down.
Right now it's 600 again.
Yesterday.
Yeah, right now it's 600 again.
Right.
Yeah.
It was 600 before, and then 24 priests ordained, 20 priests ordained each year. Now they're back up to 600 because that's how many they lost. You know what I mean?
Do we believe that?
Yeah. Right, but all 600. But they just not mentioned about the 70 that left in the last few years, right? All were thrown out. Should we back it in here? Okay, let's go ahead and say a prayer.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be. Pray for us, pray for us, victory, pray for us, pray for us, pray for us, pray for us.
It was actually 3 hours.
You were right.
Oh yeah. Okay, I only got pre-recorded the. I got a good one.
I'll give you the authority.
So the thing is, go around and help.
And I was just wondering if that would be there. It's time for them to humble down and
Okay, well then it's all right. It's important to him, right? No, but he was emotional. He was saying a factual thing.
And then you quit, you're going to have a heart attack. Because he was.
I know, but even though he's being emotional, you got to admit he's saying good points. He's just being emotional.
And then it'll just download the
Right.
And so yeah, there's also just Google, it'll be the first result. Convert files, convertfiles.com or whatever. That's another one you can use, and you can upload the video, and then you'll tell exactly.
He says if you're not a member of the society.
He wasn't telling the truth. I gotta remember, according to the canon law and the divine moral law, I remember.
Yeah, they do. What comes first, he's the boss.
No, not true. No, not true. Because God is the boss, right? And the church is over Bishop Gillette. He's a priest of Bishop Church. He's not just a priest on his own. He has to follow the law of the church. So remember, there's provisions for this in the law called Code of Canon Law, right? When he breaks the Code of Canon Law, his decrees are null and void. That's simple, right?
Yeah.
He broke every decree. No, not true at all. Not true.
Lawyers saying
The canon lawyers. Okay. Sorry, Capello, what do you call it? I know. Oh, yes. There are plenty of situations, tons of them, where a superior unjustly convicted God. Thousands of them, right? Oh, yeah, it happens all the time. There are people are still people, right? That's why the church has laws. The superior can't just do whatever he wants. That's why the church has those laws, right?
Skype has, it has like video of these laws, but it also has like you can just chat back and forth without, you can just type stuff. Just back and forth. You just have to have her.
obviously this is supposed to be valid by law, right?
I don't know.
So when I was expelled, I was valid by law.
Send in some messages and you can text. You can choose to do text or you can choose to do calls where you talk to people. Which is just like between accounts, so you talk via computer. You don't have to call someone on the phone then. I mean, it's nice. Yeah. You can do video calling on there too.
John, I'm gonna write a letter. I have been doing camera.
Okay, all right.
And we're gonna help you. See, Zebediah is our hero.
Yeah, all called me specifically for that because what I've been doing is and each one of them, right.
All they got was your upper beard.
No, I didn't have a beard then.
No, your upper beard when I split a lower beard is still so I'm not using it.
It was like I don't do that usually.
Sure.
Takes a lot to do that.
Thank you. I'm still doing it, but I haven't gotten the fourth one.
See? There you go. Don't you realize you're breaking the law of the church by going to ordinations because you're not welcome there?
Well, they didn't say that.
You know what? Back to your point you brought up, what I'm going to tell you is, if you're still thinking it's a mortal sin, miss mass on Sunday, then you better go because your catechism teaches you that for you it is.
Right.
It falls under the clause of reasonable doubt. I guess it reverses it.
So who are you?
K2OPG.
Oh, no, I make
They KB1WFI.
Oh, how you been all the way over here? Well.
What I wanted to ask you is, did you stop going to the new mass?
No, I never was.
Who
I've been going 20 years.
Who gave? Yes, but if somebody was in the new mass, say they were in Nova Scotia, what would you tell them about if there was no SSPX? Would you say for them to go to the new mass?
If there's no other mass to go to, they're not going to do it. Hey, see, they're saying, well, the Saudi doesn't say it's God.
What did the Archbishop say?
Huh?
What did the Archbishop tell the faithful?
Don't be selective on your quotes on the Archbishop because the Archbishop says it can't be God.
No, what did the I'm saying what did Archbishop said tell the faithful of when the Novus Ordo came around and they didn't have and it was in the 70s and it was no SSPX mass.
From what I read of his
No, if they're not, if there's guys multiple. No, the Archbishop, what I've read in his open letter to the journey of the first journey, he said, do not go to the mass, stay home. His instruction went further. If there's no mass, no Latin mass within an hour, then you're not. Then you're not obligated. Because the first commandment says keep the Sabbath. The church, as the other man says, the church says you it's all that's no, they didn't say no. If you're sick, you can still keep.
Obviously, if you're a mother, you have a sick baby, probably go to church.
But you can pray the rosary, and you kept the day holy. And the Archbishop, when I first came to the society, and there wasn't a mass an hour with me, and I was told you are not obligated to make that long trip, which I did around the hill. They said you stay home.
I was driving up until I moved to Stockton. I was driving 24,200 miles a year.
But you weren't up front. You didn't have
well, I didn't have to.
But who gave? And so what I'm saying is the Archbishop explained
that we did not have to. He said, stay home and pray your rosary. Did you agree with him? Didn't. So what?
But I never did that. So
Right.
and I did the driving. I go 145 miles an hour.
Right. Right. But I'm just saying, who gave anybody the authority? When they stay home. You had to use your own mind and say, if somebody's teaching me error, if somebody's compromising, if somebody's lying. At my parish, you know what they said at our parish? They said it twice now. There's somebody called and they're saying you have no to the people. You have no right to you have no right to tell a bishop what to do. So really, then you should be then you have no right to tell the local bishop he's wrong. That's what he said. And he's saying to us, he was getting around to, and he's saying we cannot tell Bishop Slade he's wrong. He said, to the faithful, you are not allowed to be armchair theologians. In other words, don't hold your catechism and don't question Bishop Slade. But you can, that's wrong. That's what he said to us.
Many people, including your Bishop, and he knows me. So last time he was there, and I do the kissing thing, Okay. So I kissed his and I said,
yes, and she got really upset with us because my husband and I, and she said, well, there was somebody out there. I said, you can't
and the new
born. That was not born.
Why is he good for 30 days? He's a heretic.
Well,
and she didn't see anything wrong with it.
No, he's not a heretic.
He's a compromise. He's going.
But there's the thing is, much like you can't go saying, well, he's a heretic. No, he's not.
He's a heretic when he says he believes 95% of heresy.
No, that is not. Look at your definition. You got to turn around.
You know, and I kind of laid there.
I know you did.
A heretic is just say the Pope is a heretic. Okay, if you're a heretic, you got to turn around and say something that's heretical. You got to turn around and say it knowing that it's heretical.
Did the Archbishop say that I'm not No, he said it can be valid. No, he said it can be valid, but he said it is illegitimate. Canon has said it's a systematic offense. It's a systematic.
First off, I've gone through a whole bunch of canons recently. Okay. You can argue extremely well that canon is not a traditional.
Because he says that he's valid in what the Archbishop is valid. And the four bishops told him they will not bring it to do because he is valid.
Okay.
And he is legitimate.
But you all the stuff that you tell me up in the last couple of months.
I did.
On canon hit.
I did.
And, what I'm going to
I don't care what the people. I'm going by.
You're not valid.
I'm going.
If the bishop who ordained him was ordained in the new life.
He wasn't.
Okay, then.
Father Hess says that right on when he was alive. You can hear him on video. He said it was a matter of fact. He said it was a matter of
He told me that the group of Wisconsin that he was ordained and St. Peter's in Rome. That's why he
That's why he said
right, but when he was ordained, it was after the new level.
But they ordained him in the old rite.
Okay, but what's ordained in the old rite by and the old rite?
Yes, and he gives his name. In a video that he was in I heard him say You do that, but I know I can do that. But that's a lie. This is him himself, and he gives, I think he gives the bishop's name, and he says that it was a bishop and all right. So he explains in detail why he is valid and legitimate, and the four bishops said, don't ask us those different people now. Are that possible? And he says it himself. And he says it himself.
I believe that
Because people, the lay people, I'm going by him in his, I'm going by him in his exact details.
I know when he was in Paul or something like that, 15 years ago, him and another priest were together, and the one priest was ordained by the new bishop.
Yes, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
And the other, and he was ordained by.
Okay, man, sorry. Step into my holy office.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But as far as he said, and he also in that same clause said, I was ordained in a systematic right. And then he goes on to explain why it was a systematic. And he also, then he found it, did I have to go to Quebec? He said, no, I was doing the right thing. I didn't know it until I read all about it. It was really documented that.
You wanted it in the Suburban, not the
Oh,
white van.
In the white van.
In the white van, next to the
van.
Suburban.
In the white van.
I got that.
On the passenger seat.
Yeah,
White
okay.
van.
Huh?
I'm gonna see if the white
Oh, they're not here. No, they're not here. I just gave to make
gold friend, what's the right thing that is and everything.
One quick question.
You still didn't put it on.
No,
Oh my gosh. No.
You know, she was saying possible not to work out this great connection. And he had told her when he was going to die. So I can tell you from that. She followed the whole doctor.
And now I've got, and I didn't have a house but now I have a house next to me. So the distance from my house to that house is 35 feet. So I was 35 feet. All over and
now she's telling me
Okay, here's what it could be. Remember, this woman said it this way. The man,
and then I did get the next meeting, and it's still in the living room in the box. Has been next week will be the year. Pay for it, but I don't have that get up with it.
There's no such you can put it up.
Oh yeah, but yeah, we got a club and all that. I don't have clubs.
takes a man.
Actually, we used it right when I said the man. We said, well, we'll use it. We don't want to maintain it. We don't want to maintain it anymore. On top of the airplanes and all that kind of stuff.
Now,
so we've got another. We've got
You don't even get it.
oh, you can't really take out the
right. I understand. Your husband.
Oh, I knew it. I was just wondering if somebody
Like
cleaned it up or something.
well, the thing I got out there and
Yeah?
Well, that's still.
you put it on and it's back hardware. You just keep pulling it, but not really dead. So the alligator can stay on the guy. So you're feeding it. So one is grounded, and two grounded in time.
So we got one guy, he's on the second floor, he's in our park, the second floor, and he reaches out his window, comes down to the gutter, and he goes around the world.
Yeah, well, you know, whatever it is, it's continuous on the work. He was just laying kind of short stuff. He was laying it in the rain garden.
I don't know if
I think that's what you're dealing with. I would say that
just laying
No,
it.
I don't. You know,
but I would
partially I look at it. If God is giving you something, I don't, I'm not joking that, but she's, she'll kind of laugh about it. Well, he was playing 3 times in the day, he did my teeth or whatever. Or he did this, it's almost like a physical thing. Yeah.
all kind of.
You don't ask Chick-fil-A why he believes in 95% No. He said, we believe, you gotta listen to his words. We believe, we accept 95% of that. He accepts he's accepting 200, he's accepting 95% of 200 heritage.
So you condemn it now.
No. There are documents over 200 heresies in that institute, of which
It is tried.
Yes.
I drove up to Wausau.
No.
It takes me an hour and 10 minutes.
No, he's not going
She
into
asked me
detail.
to.
I'm telling you, there are documents
That
over
took 2
200
minutes. And
heresies
the rest of the
of
time,
Vatican
it was all
in
about
Vatican.
Okay,
Bishop,
just give me a
you have my email.
I'm not saying anything. I got this. I just Pfeiffer maybe ready to send me copies of it. I just got that.
Yeah, I got this too.
Right?
Yeah.
Think of the
You-
good side.
And it was on traditional before.
I got this.
No.
I got this yesterday. I got it yesterday.
So, you flew in?
I got bothered with the child, right?
Really? You all the way to
Of course.
Man, Pfeiffer impressed.
Don't be disturbed.
Well, I don't impress them. I don't just care what, the only opinion I care about is that one. Second person of the Holy Trinity. That's the only person I care about. No. There's people here, the lady from California, and there's people from Colorado. I don't know who else, there might be others.
Well, I read a couple of places where they're left in the corrector. I mean, it's the last one. And 4,500, 5,000 people. Twice.
There's that many useful idiots.
Well, the thing is, there's like last year, we had 6,000. And the year before, we had 15 minutes.
Right. And you know what
It doesn't matter. They
Well,
don't
the
care
things
about.
weren't that.
It doesn't really
They
matter.
weren't that involved a couple of years ago.
You just.
The people now, they don't even know what, those people don't even know why the tradition of Catholic. I've asked them, why do I get tradition Catholic? Do you know what tradition of Catholic means?
Well, there's a lot of them that are not. I mean, boy, the short verses like here. I mean, way above the knee. Many spiritual.
And yes.
Because the society, if you go to St. Mary's, St. Mary's, they're wearing pants, they're wearing shorts. Yes, it's a mess. And why? Because the Roman pulpit, they say nothing. Yeah, Bishop Williamson believes in the U.S.
Well,
He goes against the Archbishop. The Archbishop said it's not. He said it can be valid, but it's illegitimate. He calls it bastard. What's a bastard?
well,
It's a French word.
What's that?
Right, it's a word which does not translate directly into American Dutch. The French word.
He said illegitimate. No, you have the open letter. It's defined in the open letter. He says, and he explains. He says it's an illegitimate union. And what do you get from illegitimate? A bastard. Those are his words. And he said it's. That's why he says it's a bastard match. That's why they're bastard Christian. That's why they're bastard. Those are his words.
You're going to cherish these.
Boundary. That's like saying, okay, well, Saint Benedict, we're not going to listen to you.
I'm not, you and I are not members of the society.
Correct.
So,
but for the leader of the society to say, I accept 95% of the heresies in Vatican II, he's going against the Archbishop. That's a huge compromise on behalf of the whole group.
But it's a one-man show. The society is a monarchy, the church is.
Then I guess the Archbishop was wrong telling the Pope that he was wrong.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know what he told the Pope.
He told the Pope, he said, he wrote an open letter, you controlled everybody. And he wrote him and Pastor De Mayer. He said, for us not to stand up to you, we would be accomplices. So he stood up to the Pope. He didn't have a problem with saying that. Father Pfeiffer, this is Bishop William, Bishop of Priest in the Society can say Father Pfeiffer's wrong. We're doing it to Bishop Quebec. I think there's a lot of
I was one year this in South Africa for the
What's her name?
She's been ill lately.
And but the life turned around and we go away and didn't get an answer from him. He couldn't push that around. So he's a whole lot of just a little bit.
You know, like yesterday.
So I can tell you that
Feel a little depressed.
well, I was raised. I just don't know.
I know, but when I've got relatives that are saying to me, you know, they're hearing it from the pulpit. And as I was saying, you say it Vatican II, not in the light of tradition.
Just not real happy.
You know, sometimes, but you know where they're getting at? And you know what? 20 years ago, they were saying the light of tradition is wrong, but now they're being embraced. You know what they said, John? You know, when the first
right now,
was
just
done
love
in the 60s and 70s by Rome, that was the biggest victory of the devil. Now the last victory to make is society, and then they go.
Well, maybe all the set of accomplished ones will be the survivors, and then that'll be the one that stays.
But they're heretics. I mean, they're in schism. I'm sorry, they're in schismatics. They're in schism. So they're wrong too. So I don't go.
But you know what? I mean, the bottom line
going
is
so
the
far.
one subject in the whole here between
Wilds and
Right. So
and there may be a pope in 5 or 10 or 20 years from now that says, "Yep, all them guys are lost."
They can be wrong, but that doesn't mean that people that included the priest that
I took 5 sprays of their remedy and I took,
the priests who pray for the Pope now with the last 6
Rescue Remedy was that?
they're not wrong. So that has
you just spray it in your mouth. It's like,
and that doesn't make this. Yeah, so although the Sedevacantist, they're in schism. So they have no graces. they're cut off. They're cut off from church.
We say they've got no grace in it. I get really
If you're systematic, you get no grace.
Weapons of lust. Weapons of wrath of God. So they maybe you take your one of the questions I asked them was nobody suggesting a possession. Yeah, that's fine. I was wondering that's fine. Yeah, I think that's that'll be easier for the kids to do. Yeah, no problem. And then followed by dinner. Dinner is 6:30, so you can find out. It'll take you like an hour to gather them. And then after you gather them up, do the rosary. And then maybe we do a conversation story around 7:30. That's a good. I think they're. I think actually, well, I was the right spirit. I think it's named all the names that were intense. John's great. Yes. I didn't want to give that heroes. Oh, you're doing great. It was clear. Like the thing you said, conforming the world's our ignorance. It's perfect, right? Maybe it's because you got personal knowledge.
I've seen so many stupid opinions. I have read so many stupid opinions that it's like,
well, you were a hero today, Zebediah saved the day.
I don't think so.
Oh, you kept the fire going.
This is another hand.
See, this guy, when did you come here?
When did I come to seminary? 10 years ago.
Because it wasn't my second, I was still a seminarian, right?
No, you were just out.
Oh, I was already your name, that's right.
Yeah, you were already 1 year ago.
But it was shortly after I was
Right.
Yeah.
You were doing what, 92?
94.
94.
You came like 95.
I came in.
Anyway, feel up.
Oh, no, so this is
I got a shovel ready to bury
All I wanted some of that blackberry brandy.
Oh, well, bring your bottle next time. Oh, you know what about the blackberry brandy thing I found out? The last time when Mr. James was up there, I get we were alone and we're just having a drink too, So I'm asking you actually, I know you're a gentleman and all that. Do you really like blackberry brandy, or would you prefer something else? And he says, really the truth? And I said, of course, I can take it. So we've been pushing blackberry brandy. He didn't like it. He was just having it because that's what Greg Jared had all the time. And every time we go over, Greg.
It's terrible, but the thing is, I like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got some good Polish stuff I'll bring you.
Oh, okay, all right.
Not Polish blackberry brandy.
Really?
It's sort of bitter.
We always had blackberry brandy. It was medicinal in my house.
Oh, of course.
Is it kind of a work kind of a thing? Blackberry brandy? Yeah. No, well, to me it was amazing. Oh, okay.
Cooling off compared to early morning. Temperature. That means maybe it's not going to rain.
Now, are you?
This is Roger. My buddy, Roger's runner.
Oh, nice to meet you.
And this is the answer. She's going to buy it. Got it on it. I got
I was going to do da-da-da.
Do you have the sound? You have that song, the soundtrack from Got It?
No.
The 40s? Oh, you got it here. Listen to
Song?
it. Yes.
You got it?
Yeah.
Oh, you brought your computer?
Yeah.
Oh, funny.
I got to turn this off. I got to stop this. This is.
What are you using?
Is it Audacity?
Oh.